people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist? You're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs? Fuck you. War.
Quite sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
War.
This is the end game.
I mean, as long as you're reasonable. You have to be reasonable. We have to be reasonable. Thank you very much.
You don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do.
Chris, please explain to the normie we need to finish what we've started.
All right, everybody. It is Tuesday, July 1st, 2025, the 163rd day of the Golden Age. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. Welcome back to the show. Friday, missed Monday. Here we are on Tuesday. It's not so bad. 3 days off in between. 3-hour shows, 3.5-hour long shows. I mean, it's just going to be how it is, I think, for a little while, until I get through this writing process. So thank you for bearing with me. I know a couple of people have been having a little bit of a difficulty knowing when the live streams are going to be if I don't send out the notice at the beginning of the week, and I totally understand that concern. But for the foreseeable future, it's either going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Friday. And you can just check on Truth Social, check on Telegram. Hit me up if you're really concerned. But next week, probably Monday, Wednesday evening, and Friday. And then we'll be Tuesday, Thursday, probably for the rest of the month. So just to get that out of the way right off the bat. Okay. So 17 days ago, we had the military parade. That was kind of the initial, like the preview of the 250th American birthday party. And Donald Trump is beginning the main session on Thursday. He is going to be at a rally in Des Moines, Iowa. 3rd of July rally. He did one back in 2020. You'll remember at Mount Rushmore. One of the most kind of iconic Trump speeches and events of the entire 10 years, if you ask me. It was right in the middle of the very deadly pandemic. There were people making mask issues out of people sitting 6 feet apart in an outdoor amphitheater to watch Trump speak. The whole thing was ridiculous. But a great speech, great optics, came at exactly the right time. Americans were furious that their rights were being taken away. In California, we were told, like, there's not going to be a 4th of July celebration. No one's going to be lighting off fireworks. They tried to Grinch our 4th of July. And I mean, LA wasn't like a stand up and fight kind of town. So there were a few of us who did things, but there was very little. Anyhow, so 17 days ago, he starts the birthday party off with the military parade. And we talked about that as an optics-oriented event that reaffirms Donald Trump in his standing as president with a vast and overwhelming mandate. Tons of people went to Washington, D.C. for the event. And it also cements Donald Trump in the eyes of the public as the commander in chief with control over the military. So those are very important things. It was a very important message to the world, to Trump supporters, and to the enemy. And you got to remember that a lot of the messaging is consistently from MAGA to the enemy. And so therefore, we have to incorporate that into our thinking with how we are watching things that Trump says, things that the administration does, and the rest of it, because the enemy is not Democrats. And we are still beset in even the truth community and that far into MAGA. We're still just beset with the idea that Democrats are the enemy and that all of this is about making sure that Republicans can hold power against Democrats. Both political establishments are the enemy. Trump has said that since the very beginning. That doesn't like give a free pass to the Republican side of that. It doesn't make any sense to believe that all of the establishment Republicans were removed during the first term, right? Can't only be from then. And some people soothe themselves and cope by thinking that all the betrayals are over. So now we don't have to look. Well, I think that's dead wrong. And I think that some critical communicators in the MAGA movement, or whatever info op is around the MAGA movement, have been headed in the exact same direction. Now, we've talked since 2022 about RINO hunting. A couple days after the military parade, that Monday, first thing on War Room, Steve Bannon brings up Eric Trump to talk about a phone project that they are launching. That was the anniversary day of the 10-year anniversary, the escalator Delta. Okay, so all that day, and Eric Trump talks about one of the first things he talks about is how Donald Trump is one of the greatest RINO hunters in history. And then Tucker Carlson comes on, and they start talking about neocons and Mark Levin in particular, and Fox News and the rest of it. It was very clear, as I said on my show that Monday, this was the break. I had been focused on the June 14th military parade for 2 years, since early 2023, I think March of 2023, when Trump first announced that he was going to be doing an American 250th birthday party. At that point, it's like obvious. Yes, of course, Trump's coming back. He already knows what he's going to do, what the story's going to be in 2025. Of course, he's coming back. He's not going to lose an election, because a fake election at that, because people didn't show up to vote. It was already locked in place. Okay. And so we talked that day about the neocons and MAGA and how that was going to be one of the real focuses. Now, Israel had just started the 12-day war that was 10 and a half days, the Wednesday evening into Thursday morning, depending on where you are. It was already, Thursday evening into Friday morning. It was already Friday the 13th in the Middle East by the time Israel struck Iran. And so 2 days later, or the next day, we get the military parade. And then immediately on Monday, MAGA versus the neocons, the globalists, the warmongers, begins in full. Like they all got a green light. Okay. They can fire at will at this point. They see the whites of the enemy's eyes. Okay. And so all that week, we just get neocons versus MAGA, MAGA versus neocons. Tucker Carlson takes down Ted Cruz. Mark Levin's losing his mind the whole time. We're talking about Israel attacking Iran and Iran attacking Israel. And then Trump, Top Gun Mavericks, Iran. And 3 days later, he declares peace in the world. Okay. But at no point has the MAGA versus neocons project ended. Still going. And so I want to have that in the background of our thought for the episode today. And let's actually start off with Steve Bannon from Saturday on the War Room, talking about this exact subject, MAGA versus the neocons.
Look, I've been up here for a couple of days to go through this situation in New York City.
I will just tell you, folks, when you look at the data and you look at the analysis and you look at who's supporting people and how it's coming in, people can we see you got all these America First. Can't MAGA come and save us? Can't we come and save you? You sow the wind, you're going to reap the whirlwind. You sow the wind, you're going to reap the whirlwind. And don't be reaching out to MAGA and don't be wanting to MAGA to come and save us. Okay? What MAGA wants to do and America First needs to do is to save this republic, the greatest country in the history of mankind. And on that, we're relentless. And we're going to have a debate and a discussion about every topic of our national security and our foreign policy. And if certain elements don't like it, like Tel Aviv, Levin and that crowd, well, you know what? Too damn bad. Okay? You can whine, throw your toys out of the crib at pram, and you can, say all this and they're terrible people. Well, hey, you can say what you want, but we're going to have a debate on this, and this policy is going to get set right.
And indeed it is. And still we have, as I said, truthers concerned about Republicans beating Democrats. They talk about the midterms. They're very concerned about the policy of the big, beautiful bill and how everything is working in the Congress and Senate. And all of that is pretty silly because what we are watching is a television show to educate Americans on who their true enemy is. And instead of paying attention to that show, we have people watching a soap opera on television that they are addicted to, hoping that their favorite characters conquer the other favorite characters. Okay? Very dumb. But the only way through it is to go straight forward. Okay? And you let people catch up when they catch up. But if you want to waste your time back there, don't know what you're thinking. Okay? By the way, this is probably going to annoy me 1,000 times today. I bought a website domain name the other day on GoDaddy, forgetting how much of an annoyance it can be, because when you buy a domain name, they send the information to all of these organizations, and then you just get nonstop spam for weeks on end. So infuriating. But now my phone is over there and hopefully we'll be okay. While we are paused, let's go to Kara MAGA with a Rumble rant. $20 in the chat on Rumble APL. And, you got to start strong. Strong start. Thank you, Kara MAGA. Okay, so let's get into some more of this business with the neocon versus MAGA thing behind the entire time. All right. And understand neocons as the conservative establishment arm of the Uniparty. They are pass-throughs for the global regime's agenda. They operate on behalf of the global regime, trying to implement the global regime agenda here in the United States. For a very long time, that's included all the open borders immigration to help their corporate clients, to help the global regime in the migration programs, slave trade. Okay. And it's not that every Republican wants that. Most normal Republicans want the borders closed so that no illegal immigrants are coming in. And the neocons will say that they are aligned with that. And their solution is to increase the technology down at the border, because the technology is defense technology in some regard, and facial recognition, biometrics, stuff like that can easily be turned in on the rest of the country. And so even when they're making efforts in the direction of going along with normal Republicans, with normal conservatives, if that's what you consider yourself, MAGA, obviously, even Christians, they align in the Judeo-Christian sense, but they're not actually aligned with Christians. They're not concerned with Christian interests. They don't stop abortion. Okay. The illegal aliens, as I just said, they are the other half of the Uniparty, and they are helping the Uniparty left to pass this agenda in full. The fact that they have R's next to their names and that some of the politicians have R's next to their names, and that we believe we have to win fake elections to get enough politicians with R's next to their name in office, and then everything will be fixed. But everything won't be fixed, okay? Because the R next to their name isn't an indication of anything. Could be. Maybe one day it will be again. But it doesn't mean that they're aligned with Donald Trump. And if they're not aligned with Donald Trump and they are aligned with the neocons, well, then they might as well have a D next to their name, right? So critical to understand this when we go through these issues. And I'll obviously bring this back around at the end, but I just want to point out today what it is that we are dealing with, okay? So let's get started. Before we get too deep into that stuff, let's just get started with a few quick things happening that are definitely going to be in, the mainstream understanding of, man, what a nightmare. So here's the thing. Before we get started with that, let me see if this works. Nightmare averted. Okay, thank goodness. All right. I had to reinstall my operating system on my computer yesterday. It was a total waste of a day. And when you do that, you have to start your settings up again and to put them all back, or some of them at least, back to the way that they were before. A lot of it comes through, some of it doesn't. And my browser was not allowing me to share my tab. And so if that wasn't happening, we would be in some trouble. So thank goodness, crisis averted. What to know? They've changed the title here. Trump toured Florida's immigration detention center in the Everglades. Here's what to know. And this is the Associated Press, okay? So they've got some protests out here already at the place they're calling Alligator Alcatraz, okay? Keep the land sacred. Is the land sacred? Keep your Gestapo out of our glades. Who is the land sacred to? I mean, is it just generally that land is sacred? So Donald Trump went down there with Meatball Ron, that is Ron DeSantis, the so-called governor of Florida, a state that has fake elections. And there is the Instagram influencer, Kristi Noem, who is the so-called Homeland Security Secretary. And she was a governor of a state with fake elections as well. Okay, let's go down here for a moment. Many of you are familiar with the Alligator Alcatraz concept. It is a detention camp in the Everglades surrounded by an alligator moat, apparently. And that is supposed to be ultra threatening. No detainee will ever escape through this alligator moat. It's just impossible. They just have alligators on top of other alligators. It's an incredible moat. I don't know how deep that moat is. I hope that they make it deeper. If it's not very deep, then you can probably see the alligators and you can just wait until they're asleep and run across or something. I mean, it's not that big, but hey, it's a good time. Okay. So more commie signs, a threat to the environment. The illegal alien detention center is a threat to the environment. No justice, no peace, no ice in our street. Okay, commie. Let's keep it going. It's so crazy. Oh, look at this one. This is the one I wanted to see. Don't make me repeat myself. They are quoting history. So you don't want history to repeat itself. And what do they mean there? Well, they mean that we are going to be the ancestors of today's neocons, the Nazis. That's who we are going to be if we deport people who were brought here in a slave trade. Okay. Apparently, well, I might as well go there right now. Starborn just dropped this in the chat. This is from Nick Sorter over on X, formerly Twitter. Hold for processing just a moment. I have a feeling this is going to be at least somewhat amusing. So, and it's on topic, so we might as well add it in here. Sorter says, WTF, Kristi Noem just revealed one of the illegals they arrested was a cannibal who began to eat himself on a deportation flight. Yeah, he was like, I'll show those alligators. They're only going to get half a meal. This is why we need mass roundups. Okay, well, settle down, Kai. And apparently there's video here, but it's not doing a very good job of loading. Oh, maybe now? Hopeless. It's all falling apart, everybody. It's all falling apart. Okay, well, whatever. We don't need to hear her say the thing that she just, or that he just summed up right there. All right. So we have a cannibal who is eating himself. And we're just going to have to pretend that all of it is real. Doesn't matter how ridiculous it gets. We have to know, we have to care. Let's find out his name. Let's find out who his relatives are. Let's find out how long he's been doing his cannibalism. Let's find out what part of his body he was taking bites into. Let's figure out where he went to college, where he went to high school, his prom date. We could spend an entire week on the internet just trying to figure out everything that happened with the cannibal who started to eat himself. Start to eat himself. I'm falling apart, man. I'm falling apart. All right. It's all real. It's all real. Okay. Trump had this hilarious comment, and then we'll get into some more important Trump business. But this was from his tour of Alligator Alcatraz today.
In the 4 years before I took office, Joe Biden allowed 21 million people, that's a minimum, I think it was much higher than that, illegal aliens to invade our country. He invaded our country just like a military would invade. It's tougher because they don't wear uniforms. You don't know who they are. More than the populations of New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Phoenix, and Philadelphia combined. That's what came into our country from prisons, from mental institutions, from street gangs, drug dealers. It's disgusting. This enormous country-destroying invasion has swamped communities nationwide with massive crime, crippling costs, and burdens far beyond what any nation could withstand. No nation could withstand what we did, and we're in the process of doing it, but we have some great people doing it now, and you see them up here with me. But it's, I'd call it like an unforced era. It's sort of like men and women sports. It's sort of like transgender for everybody. How could they have done this to our country?
It's a good question. And what we have today is an optics-oriented event. Trump went down to view Alligator Alcatraz. Now, did Trump need to check on the progress personally? Did he need to see it himself? The answer is definitely no. Okay, so then he went down for a different reason, and seeing it himself was the ostensible purpose and the primary activity, but it was an optics-oriented event. And once he's captured the attention, once he's got the appropriate optics, then he can deliver the message. And the message is, look at how many illegal aliens are in this country, more than the populations of many of our major cities. And they have all these effects on American civic life. And we will get into some more of that. But an optics-oriented event. And there are more establishment people there gathering in the same optics. Ron DeSantis being one, Kristi Noem being another, but Ron is there with his close associates down in Florida. I think his Attorney General, James Uthmeyer, was there next to him, and Trump had complimentary things to say about Ron DeSantis. He said they've skirmished a few times. Maybe they'll skirmish again in the future, but hopefully not. Hopefully not again. And so what does it mean? Does it mean they're actually best friends and it was all kayfabe? Maybe. Okay. Or maybe it means that Trump is saying nice things while doing the Ron DeSantis event so that Trump is seen as the person actually doing the Alligator Alcatraz. The optics are immediately shifted to Trump, even though it was being presented as a Ron DeSantis thing. So possible there, but we can go either way on that. Even if it is, right? Let's just assume, for the sake of the example, that Ron DeSantis and Kristi Noem are both part of some anti-Trump project that was put in place long ago. These people were pre-selected for these roles years in the past, and now they are playing out these roles. And they are not actually aligned with Trump, but Trump is drafting off of that story, okay? Because he knows that as he keeps going forward, whoever he is aligned with at a given time, he's going to eventually surpass them, not only in his action in the real world circumstances, but in people actually supporting him rather than the groups that he aligned with, even people who were aligned with those groups over Trump first. Okay. And we've seen this over and over again. People lose their anger toward Trump. They lose the idea that they are smarter than Trump at some point while Trump is aligned with their interests. And then they move only toward Trump, not committed to their prior interests that brought them to Trump. Okay. So we've seen that happen a number of times. We cannot suspect that people who are aligned with Trump are actually pro-Trump. It's entirely possible that they are part of the operation that is meant to simply outlast Trump. Okay. And so again, for the sake of the example, let's think of Kristi Noem and Ron DeSantis in that way. Then does it make sense for Trump to come do an optics-oriented event? Yes, because he reframes what they are doing as something he is doing to the extent that they are doing it, right? But if it was all part of that program that was set up in advance, now Trump gets to go around taking credit for all of the good aspects anytime anyone in the GOP does something good. Trump gets credit for it. Genius. It's also how it should work because the people are supporting Trump. And so if something good is being done that Trump can capitalize on, well, then fine. But generally, when the regime is operating, they're not doing things for the good of the people, even when the interests seem to align. Okay, so an optics-oriented event for something like this can be good, regardless of the status of the other parties there. Okay, let's continue. This is just a quick one. I actually thought I had these in the opposite order. Here we are. There we are.
Hey, Biden wanted me in here, okay? That's it. He wanted me. It didn't work out that way, but he wanted me in here.
What's your expectation what this will do for the speed?
So Biden wanted Trump in there. He said it didn't work out that way, but he wanted me in here, that son of a bitch. And maybe, hey, Alligator Alcatraz, it is the swamp going to the swamp. Did Biden want Trump in a detention facility like that? Was all of this arranged to work a different way? I would suggest that perhaps it was all arranged in advance to work a different way. And the immigration stuff on this side of the border and south of the border, all the way through the what they call the Golden Triangle, there are centers along the way that are paid for with US dollars. And so there are all these waypoints along the journey to cross the border that are entirely set up and run like functionally as institutions. We were always told that they were processing immigrants in, and that's entirely possible that they were, but it's also possible that they were processing immigrants out and that they, regardless, could be repurposed for that at this point. So a facility like that, we're told it just got stood up in 8 days. I mean, I guess, did they dig the moats in 8 days or something? It looks to be too much of a, sorry, I'm going to get this picture back up if I can find it. There it is. I mean, I don't know if we put 100,000 Chinese on this or something, but that doesn't look like it got done in 8 days. It also doesn't look like it just got done. Okay. That picture's from June 27th, 2025. It says in the AP article. So I don't know. That's a runway there. So they can land planes with detainees and bring them right into the facility. And they can also ship detainees off elsewhere. Now, we assume that the detainees will all be illegal aliens. We can hope for more than that. But, I mean, at this point, like, all of that is on the back burner, you know. But we could hope for that. Maybe they're shipping people down to Guantanamo Bay back and forth from this facility. Who knows? But great optical event. And the Alligator Alcatraz branding has seemed to make itself viral quickly. This is Donald Trump talking about giving an update on the other Alcatraz. Because of the violence and criminality I have seen due to the open border policy of Sleepy Joe Biden, in particular allowing millions of people into our country who shouldn't be here, I wanted something representative to show how we fight back. And then it happened. I saw a picture of Alcatraz looking so foreboding. And I said, we're going to look into renovating and rebuilding the famous Alcatraz prison, sitting high on the bay, surrounded by sharks. What a symbol it is and will be. Conceptual work started 6 months ago, and various prison development firms are looking at doing it with us. Still a little early, but a lot of promise. And so a very interesting post and announcement on the same day that he visits Alligator Alcatraz. And maybe Alligator Alcatraz will become a joke at some point. I don't know. And as the focus shifts to the original Alcatraz, for instance, and I don't mean necessarily a joke, but maybe a decoy or something. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. I don't want to imply negative judgment to it. Okay, so we were talking about illegals. Let's go to a few stories relating to that issue, and then we'll get into the really important topics of the day, like the Senate passing a piece of legislation, a spending bill, and Elon Musk saying mean things about Donald Trump. Oh, it's important. This is from the Federalist. Republicans challenge Arizona law permitting non-residents to register to vote. Now, that is the sort of thing we are led to believe does not happen anywhere. No state would ever allow that. We're told that illegal aliens don't vote. Instances of illegal aliens voting are exceedingly rare. And what they mean when they're saying that is instances that have been caught and then announced publicly are exceedingly rare. And that's because the people running the election system are intimately involved with the election fraud and the entire system as a whole. So, of course, the people running the system are not going to be examining the system for all its flaws that they know about and exploit. So, of course, there's not going to be that many examples. But then you have Arizona, who's just like, yeah, non-residents, okay. We talked about it with New York last week, and this hasn't gotten all the way there. So let's not freak out or anything. But a provision of Arizona law allowing individuals who have never resided in the U.S. to register to vote in the state is unconstitutional. A lawsuit filed Monday alleges, filed in Maricopa County Superior Court against the state and Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, one of the guys involved in the 2020 election theft, and was the beneficiary of election theft in 2022 when he was, quote unquote, elected. The challenge contests the legality of a section of state law stipulating that any United States citizen who has never resided in the United States and whose parent is a United States citizen who is registered to vote in this state is eligible to register to vote and may vote in this state using a federal write-in early ballot. So this is kind of like an inverted form of birthright citizenship. This is someone who's never been here and their parent is a citizen, so they get to vote. This actually this makes some amount of sense, but not if they've never lived here, right? So couldn't illegal alien or any sort of immigrant come to the United States, be naturalized, and now their child can vote, even if that child has never resided in the state? That sounds very suspect. Let's continue. The lawsuit was brought by the Republican National Committee, the Arizona GOP, and Arizona GOP Chair Gina Swoboda. Restoring Integrity and Trust in Our Elections PAC is sponsoring the litigation. Plaintiffs argue that residency is not inherited and cannot be established by proxy, and I would agree with that. And that an individual who has never personally made Arizona his home necessarily has not resided in the state for any period of time within the meaning of Article 7, Section 2A of the Arizona Constitution. Okay, so they are going after the ability of non-residents to vote in Arizona. And I think that that's good, because while it doesn't cover the entire issue of illegal aliens voting, which is really illegal aliens, very likely with none of their own knowledge or choice, being marked down as registering to vote when they are given state-issued driver's licenses and other IDs, then of course their ballots are printed without them knowing. They are sent to an address and collected without the illegal alien knowing. And then they are marked, the ballot is marked and cast and counted without the illegal alien knowing. But the illegal alien's identity has been used to cast a vote. And so we have seen that many times over the years. We are told it doesn't happen, but they make provisions in law for all of these various aspects of illegal alien voting to become possible, one loophole at a time. And then you take that loophole to the federal courts, you get a friendly decision on your side, and then that's just court precedent and law until someone is able to bring that exact issue in the perfect way all the way to the Supreme Court. And if you wonder how our system gets rigged, well, that's how it gets rigged. So we have to, unfortunately, have all of these challenges, even about these very specific and more questionable claims. Let's keep going. This is the Daily Mail from yesterday. How Trump's new searchable national citizenship system could change U.S. elections forever. Well, that is quite dramatic. Oh, cool. More spam phone calls. All right. The Trump administration has quietly assembled a new searchable database of U.S. citizens. The program is designed to help state election officials cross-check voter registrants across the country to ensure only U.S. citizens are able to cast ballots. It's an initiative that follows former Doge head Elon Musk's efforts to gain access to Social Security Administration and other agency data. And it's likely to be opposed by Democrats and also others concerned that American voters' data could be breached or compromised. The administration speedily constructed the system in just a matter of months after Trump issued an executive order directing Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to create a system to ensure only citizens vote in elections. State officials should access appropriate systems for verifying the citizenship or immigration status of individuals registering to vote, the order states. Okay. So Elon Musk was trying to access the Social Security Administration data, and we were told that that was a crucial issue. He was going to mess with people's Social Security. He was going to introduce some kind of virus or something, and all their Social Security was just going to disappear forever. We were told that there were privacy issues. They were concerned that someone in the government might have access to government data. And I suggested at the time when people were worried about Palantir and the rest of it, and I'm not suggesting there's no reason to be worried about Palantir. We should be worried about absolutely everything in the world that is being given inordinate power. Okay. It's totally appropriate to be worried and suspicious and skeptical in those situations. All right. But it doesn't mean that we have to panic, decide that something is 100% bad, and then keep it away from us forever, because then we'll just miss things. Right. So I said at the time, it was my suspicion that they have a range of government databases that have not been centralized together and analyzed together against one another to get rid of redundancies and fraudulent entries and data mistakes and whatever. Okay. Seemed like we didn't have that. And the Trump administration was bringing Palantir aboard to use their Foundry program to be able to achieve that within the government. Something to do with Elon Musk and Doge, maybe too, the Doge team. Elon Musk's not there anymore. Elon Musk is not Doge anymore. Russ Vought is Doge, more or less now, and we'll come back to that later. But the idea of centralizing these databases, I said, one of the things they're going to have a problem with at some point is the voter registries, because they create identities all over the country, and they create identities for social security numbers and the rest of it, right? There's a lot of quote unquote people who just don't exist. Okay. And they have information in government files despite their non-existence. People who never existed, or people who just simply aren't US citizens and shouldn't be voting or whatever. And so if we put all of those databases together and we find those redundancies and all those mistakes and the rest of it, what happens to voter registries? Well, one would have to suspect that they're going to drop dramatically. And if voter registries drop dramatically, there's no real way to hide that. And there's no real way to excuse it. Okay. The Democrats and Republicans can't come out and say, this has been our greatest voter registry period of all time. We registered 40 million people. It's not possible. Okay. So there's no way to hide something like that. And I think that we are headed in that direction. And that's going to be a big deal. And so you can imagine the freak out. One of the comments in the Daily Mail article called it had some University of Chicago or somewhere professor saying, this is a hair on fire moment. Why is it a hair on fire moment? Unless you depend on illegal aliens voting. And again, having their vote cast for them, having a ballot cast in their identity and counted in the count. So this could make that significantly harder. And again, the voter registry, go through the entire election. People go in, they cast their votes, other votes come in, and the rest of it. Even if you believe that at the end of that, there is some number reflecting real votes, which I don't believe, it is more likely that there is a number reflecting something close to the votes that were counted into the system at that point. That is probably more aligned in terms of its accuracy. But the problem then is, if they are down and their calculations didn't work out to support the results that they ultimately needed, they needed to generate 10 or 20 or 30,000 more votes for this governor or this congressman or the president or whatever it might be. If they're backfilling afterward, they need some leeway in the voter registration database prior to the election date to be able to draw from for those extra ballots. And I think that stuff like this is going to make that leeway disappear. What if there are just no extra names for them to flood into the system at the end? Okay. They're not actually waiting for ballots coming through the mail. They're creating new ballots and entering them into the system. So if they don't have the names to do that, well, it's going to be a pretty difficult problem to overcome, assuming that we continue to have elections. And again, I don't know that that's a very good idea, but hey, people are like, what do you mean? Maybe we have some new people in here today who will not understand what I mean by that. And they're welcome to pipe up in the chat. And a nice, healthy crowd this early on over on Rumble. What a joy. Same over on Substack and YouTube. So hello to all of you. If you are just here for the first time and you would like to support the show, in case you like the show and you want to come back, the best and easiest and freest way to do that is to simply hit the thumbs up, or at least theoretically that is so. If you like the show. If you don't like the show, don't hit thumbs up. I don't know. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. Let's continue. A little update on this story. And by the way, I meant to mention this at the top of the show, but when we have a holiday week and we are just in a narrative only political environment, we're going to get a lot of reruns during the holiday week. And I think that's what we're going to get all this week. And at the end of that, we'll be told sometime tomorrow afternoon or Thursday afternoon, maybe we'll be told that the big, beautiful bill passed, and then Trump's going to come out and talk about it. And great, I guess. But that's the big news of the week, the big, beautiful bill. Oh, it's going to come down to the last moment. Whatever. Okay. So as I was saying, reruns. Here is a rerun. Just a quick update from a couple of weeks ago. This is Fox News. The FBI blocked probe into alleged Chinese 2020 election meddling to protect Wray from fallout, documents show. That is the FBI director, Chris Wray. The FBI blocked an investigation into allegations that the CCP manufactured fake driver's licenses and shipped them to the U.S. in a scheme to influence the 2020 presidential election in favor of Joe Biden because it would contradict then FBI Director Christopher Wray's congressional testimony. Newly declassified FBI documents obtained by Fox News Digital reveal. The records, which include communications between FBI officials ahead of the 2020 election, were recently declassified by FBI Director Kash Patel and submitted to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley. Hold on, I went down too far. Fox News Digital reported in June that Patel located and declassified the original reporting document, alleging the CCP sought to deliver fake driver's licenses to Chinese sympathizers in the U.S. who had cast a vote for Biden in the 2020 election. The document did not say whether any ballots were cast as part of the scheme. Did they need people to take their IDs and go vote in person? No, that sounds crazy. I don't know. This story has sounded like a limited hangout to me the entire time. I mean, it's not to say that interested parties in China or regime proxies in China didn't interfere at all in the 2020 election. I have no problem saying that there was Chinese interference, just like there was probably Russian interference and Iranian interference, Saudi Arabian interference, and Hungarian interference and French interference. Just goes on down the line. It's just computers around the world and little proxies, donors in places. The regime is everywhere. Our side is everywhere. Good twin versus evil twin, everywhere. Telling us that the Chinese Communist Party interfered in the election. So therefore, she is the guy to blame. It's also silly. And we'll get to some of that later. The FBI recalled that reporting, though, September 25th of 2020, just a day after Wray testified before Congress that the FBI had not seen any coordinated voter fraud ahead of the 2020 election. The FBI at the time had recalled that report in order to re-interview the source. It also directed recipients of the original report to destroy all copies of the original report and remove the original report from all computer holdings. So something was going on in the FBI. They did not want election fraud properly investigated and reported out to the public. And it could be a number of things. All right. There's no reason to suspect from this instance alone and what we know about it, that this was a grave FBI error. A lot of people want to think Chris Wray is the bad guy, and he might be. I'm not saying he's not the bad guy, but we don't know that Chris Wray is the bad guy. And there are other scenarios that we can imagine where he would not be. Okay. And that's one of the major problems with playing black hat, white hat all the time. Right. And then judging people based on their interactions with another person. If it so happens that there are people behind the scenes who publicly look like bad guys, but are actually good guys behind the scenes, well, then it would be highly likely that regime-oriented interests would attack those people under MAGA branding. Okay. It would, the goal would be to make us dislike all of the people who might be helping us the most in favor of the people who are helping them the most. Okay. And there's no stop to that initiative. Now, I don't know what Thomas Massie's ultimate classification is going to be. Sometimes I like Thomas Massie. Sometimes I can't stand Thomas Massie. Trump says a lot of bad things about him, but they've worked together in the past. Who knows what Trump is doing in that narrative manipulation? Thomas Massie could be an example of the Con Inc. side of things, taking one of their people and setting that person up as largely pro-Trump, but anti-Trump in all these particular ways that will move Trump supporters away from Trump ultimately. They'll try to be more MAGA than Trump. And we've seen that countless times. And we've seen it from normies and people right in the heart of the Republican establishment. Okay. So you got to look at these things in multiple ways every time. If Ray was a good guy, there are uniparty right interests who would then attempt to paint Ray as a bad guy. Chris Wray is the reason that we had Joe Biden pretending to be president for 4 years. Well, is he a bigger reason for that than Donald Trump himself? That's the question. Elections are stolen. I'm not saying elections are not stolen. And I'm not saying that the enemy wasn't trying to achieve the election outcome they achieved. Okay. I'm suggesting that Trump allowed for other things to happen and allowed them to align and then performed a whole series of his own actions to lead us into that period. And so to then say, well, no, it was Chris Wray's fault because he knew that the Chinese were sending fake driver's licenses around. That would be crazy, right? And we don't think through each step of that logical process in order to get there and what our basis is for thinking Ray is the bad guy. We just know there's been a bunch of stories where Ray is the bad guy. We think he might be the bad guy. Here's another story that says he's the bad guy. Therefore, he's the bad guy. Okay. But this story doesn't have to be any more legitimate than the one before. All right. All we need to know as Americans is that there is nothing in our election system that can guarantee reliable results of an election representing the will and consent of the American people to be governed. There's no way to perform a legitimate election. Therefore, there is no way other than a vast and overwhelming public mandate to suggest any legitimacy in being governed for anyone. And that's it. Okay. So that's all we have to know about elections. Elections are a nullity until they are fixed, until the entire country knows that they are a problem and they are fixed. They are meaningless. Okay. So we shouldn't waste our time in them. We should spend our time making sure that the illegitimacy of our elections is broadly known across the American public in every potential opportunity to let people know if they bring up midterm. Oh, well, he's got to do that. Otherwise, oh man, he's going to suffer in the midterms. The midterms are 17 months away. 18 months away? 17, I think. Am I doing my math right? Yeah. No, I'm not. 16 months. Okay. We can continue now that I've figured out that critical issue. Elections are 16 months away. Okay. The midterms are not going to be decided now. No one's going to remember. No one even knows what their own congressman voted for the big, beautiful bill or what their own senators voted Now, I understand that 1% of the people have actually gone and looked to see what their representative did. All right. Fine. I know it's not no one, but I didn't look. Why? Don't care. Okay. So Ted Cruz and John Cornyn voted for it. Whatever. Never mind. I was going to go down a different path. I will refrain from going down that path. Nobody's going to remember in the midterms what people now are doing. So if you are premising political arguments and you are arguing against taking a principled stand on something in service of a potential Republican win in the 2026 midterms held 16 months from now, you've missed the boat. What are you doing with your life? Honestly, we have to, at some point, get past that. And as soon as you understand why we have to get past it, well, it wears off immediately. And by the way, you'll find other things to be interested in, and they'll be more meaningful to you when you're not focusing your time on how to win midterms on behalf of Republicans who already don't help Donald Trump. Okay? So really, what are we doing? And it still works. It is still an effective tactic in argumentation. People are so accustomed to making everything about elections that if you tell them, well, Republicans are going to lose if you do this, it's like, okay, well, we better not do that. We can't lose an election. Elections are fake. There is no winning and losing fake elections. There's only being told by the television what they have chosen for what will happen. Let's continue on. Bringing Palantir back into it. This is from Business Wire, a Berkshire Hathaway company. That would be Warren Buffett. It wants to let you know. So this is a press release from Palantir and from Accenture. Palantir and Accenture Federal Services join forces to help federal government agencies reinvent operations with AI. And so, again, this is somewhat along the same lines that we were talking about, that we were discussing a few minutes ago, with the centralization of government data. There is probably a level to which that is absolutely necessary and will eliminate the opportunities for the fraud in the government systems. And I don't know about you, but I've been hearing for my whole life how every time someone mentions a government and their technological capabilities and the systems that they operate on in the government offices, it's always like, our tech is so old. These computers haven't had their antivirus updated in 20 years, stuff like that. Okay. And so why would you keep terrible systems that don't provide effective and efficient data analysis, which is the point of keeping all that data? Why would you want systems that don't allow for that? I personally would not want that situation. I would want to get the job done as effectively and efficiently as possible, because I'm supposed to be serving people. I'm not supposed to be making the government more powerful. So they have these systems that cannot connect with one another, and a closed circuit of a system so that the information can't get out anywhere and be messed with. Those are the sorts of circumstances you would expect if someone was trying to pull one over on the people. And that's exactly what they've done. So Palantir could be bad, could be good. Peter Thiel could be bad, could be good. They could be the most dystopian company in the entire world. And also, they could be used because of their alignment right now, because of the products they've created, to destroy the regime and elements of the regime, and maybe Palantir itself. I don't know. I'm not suggesting that's what's going to happen. But it's just another thing that we have to remain open-minded about, okay? And try to understand what's actually happening rather than have an emotional reaction to it. Oh, those are the bad guys. Now we don't need to learn. We still need to learn. Palantir, a leading provider of AI systems, and Accenture Federal Services, a leading U.S. federal technology company and subsidiary of Accenture LLP, today announced a landmark strategic partnership naming Accenture Federal as a Palantir preferred implementation partner for U.S. federal government customers. Together, the companies will deploy commercial-grade AI-powered solutions to address federal agencies' highest priority operational challenges, from optimizing and orchestrating mission-critical workflows to enhancing decision-making and increasing operational resilience. As part of the collaboration, Accenture Federal Services and Palantir will partner to train and certify Accenture Federal's data and AI team of 1,000 professionals on Palantir Foundry and artificial intelligence platform to establish a premier joint delivery capability of cutting-edge automation for the federal government. Accenture Federal is a natural Palantir partner, said Alex Karp. What makes this partnership so uniquely powerful is Accenture's expertise working with the federal government and our ability to bring commercial capabilities to government solutions, combined with Palantir's deep experience in government software, said Julie Sweet, the CEO and chair of Accenture. The two companies will initially focus on the co-development for three offerings: enterprise to edge data fusion, using Palantir's ontology and AI platform to accelerate modernization of enterprise business systems, to push critical data from the enterprise to the tactical edge. So that's getting the information where it needs to be for people to act on that information. Predictive supply chain orchestration, combining Accenture's federal and commercial logistics expertise with Palantir AI to help government agencies deliver optimized, autonomous, and resilient supply chain workflows. Now, I don't know what it means to have the government deeply involved in supply chains, but I suppose that they have to be for certain things like military. And I mean, that would be enough of an example on its own, but obviously with a deportation process, for instance, you're going to need a supply chain and a logistics flow for that operation. So again, is this necessary and efficient and can be used in a responsible way? Or is it only evil, unnecessary, and exploitative? It's one of those tough issues that we've talked about a number of times when it comes to technology, right? The technology is a tool. I'm on technology right now. I got a computer in front of me, got a television there, a camera there. Here's a microphone. I don't know how any of these things work. I could never build them. Okay. I would not even probably successfully take one apart without breaking it. Although I could. I'm not totally useless with my hands. I mean, I was raised in the country, so I know some of these things. But these are all tools, and it depends on how you use them. If I stare at that television and watch garbage content from mainstream media come into my eyes all day from that television, well, then I am using that piece of technology in a destructive way. If I'm monitoring it so that I can be looking up that way rather than right down here at my computer for the entire show, well, then maybe that's provided an advantage. I couldn't do any of this without technology. That's my point. All of it is a tool. It depends on who's using the tool and how they're using it, which is why, again, it's critical to understand the motivations of the people actually operating the technology. You know, if Palantir's access can be totally restricted in some way, and I don't know that's possible, right? I don't know that. But if it can be, and then it's just a technology platform that a company uses, well, it's really then a matter of whether or not the company is using it for good or evil, and Palantir in that situation becomes a neutral actor. And I think it's important to understand that. But let's wrap this up. Operationalize financial intelligence. That's the third key offering, providing a 360-degree view of agency budgets and expenditures across numerous systems to enhance fiscal transparency and accountability. And all of that is important. Mike Gallagher, head of defense for Palantir Technologies, said, the world is getting more dangerous, and we need to provide America's warfighters with cutting-edge AI computing and solutions in order to enhance deterrence. This partnership will empower those warfighters with information and analytics, allowing them to fight smarter. Now, Mike Gallagher, you might remember from Congress. So Mike Gallagher, this guy right here, I think he's Wisconsin. Yeah, Green Bay, Wisconsin. He joined Palantir as head of defense in June 2024, succeeding Doug Filipponi, who transitioned to an advisory role. And he chose to step down from his congressional seat rather than run for re-election, and immediately went to a military contractor, essentially, in Palantir. How much do you trust Mike Gallagher? My answer would be, I don't trust Mike Gallagher at all. Okay. Mike Gallagher, as far as I'm concerned, is Dan Crenshaw, who's John McCain. All right. I don't trust any of these people. Just screams neocon to me. I don't know that that's the right answer. Maybe one of you has an opinion about Mike Gallagher that I might be interested in learning, that I might not have considered. By all means, send it my way. But that doesn't seem like a positive development. Let's continue. So, to one of Palantir's founders, Peter Thiel, did an interview with the New York Times columnist Ross Douthat. Now, Ross Douthat used to be, I believe, at the National Review. He is now one of the New York Times conservative columnists. They still talk about these people as though they are actually on the right. They are not on the right. They are on the left with neocon branding, and then they will take whatever approach they need to that neocon branding. Ross Douthat wrote a book called Decadent or Decadence, talking about how our society had become decadent, and nonetheless a Trump deranged, anti-Trump, never Trump hater for 10 years. And if that's changed somehow, by all means tell me, but I don't think it has. And you can hear the way that he discusses Trump in the interview if you listen to the whole thing and understand that immediately. So what we are talking about is the so-called conservative columnist from the New York Times interviewing the so-called Christian conservative, gay, Peter Thiel, who is a tech investor in DARPA Technologies, was one of the original investors in Facebook. In fact, you might even say that's when it became, when it went from LifeLog and became Facebook. And essentially that's what we have going on with Palantir still, just tons of data being processed together. We talk about the great cloud in the sky and all of everyone's data and the processing with various algorithms and artificial intelligence. It's the beginning of the path to the end of the path, and we can see what all of this allows for in 2025, okay? It's not that it's all bad. It allows for bad, okay? It's possible that these tools could be used for great evil, which is why a lot of people are hesitant to have them in the world in the first place. Although I would suggest that we've probably had many of those examples in the past, and I'm not sure that they've all turned out bad, okay? So regardless, we just have to take it as it comes. Try to make sure that the people controlling these powerful tools are not evil from our position of limited power in our own lives. You know, do what we can to limit their power by understanding what their power is and how carefully it needs to be watched. So I think that in a matter of a few clips, people will probably turn against Peter Thiel fully forever. I'm not sure that's entirely warranted, but it might be. Here is Thiel on populism and this is in the context of a conversation about Donald Trump.
Peak of populism right now would be Silicon Valley made an alliance with the populists, but in the end, the populists don't care about science. They don't want to spend money on science. They want to kill funding to Harvard just because they don't like Harvard, right? And in the end, you're not going to get the kind of investments in the future that Silicon Valley wanted. Is that wrong?
Yeah, but we have to go back to this question of, how well is the science working in the background? This is where, the New Dealers, whatever was wrong with them, they pushed science hard, and you funded it, you gave money to people. And
just to be clear, the New Deal is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and it essentially installed socialism, if not communism, in our country. And Peter Thiel is pointing to that model and saying, well, it's good that they invested in science. Hey, Peter Thiel, you're a progressive, okay? You might have your ostensibly Christian beliefs. You might talk about those. You might talk about Rene Girard and his opinions on the Bible, which seem to be your opinions on the Bible. But you're a progressive. This entire conversation is about what Peter Thiel discusses as stagnation. He believes that we haven't advanced down all these various technological lines in the last 50 years. And what we need to do is advance down those technological lines. Now, many of them that he mentions throughout this interview are things that I would say, well, that's ridiculous. That's not real. But he loves it. I got to say, the guy's a progressive. I don't know how anybody can believe he's a conservative. His priorities are progressive. He might be, and he's a confusing one, as I've mentioned many times, but to the extent that he is down with the Sovereign Individual, the book from 1999, and he kind of halfway references it in this interview. He wrote the foreword for that book when it was re-released in, I believe, 2018, or maybe it was, no, I think maybe it was the 25th anniversary, something like that, of the book. But so he is very much aligned with that, or has been in the past. And that would be in alignment with the whole Curtis Yarvin thing and kind of these little offshoot societies, these city states, the Singapores of the world and Hong Kong as it used to be, or some of these other little separate entities. They have them all over the world, and they want more of them. Now, that's when it seems like, okay, well, they are moving toward decentralization, and that is moving toward the right, right? You have the authoritative state that does everything on the left, the collectivists and all that. And then on the right, you have the right goes toward anarchy, right? You don't want that control. You want that decentralization. But the thing about the Yarvin idea, and I think what Peter Thiel supports, is that within those societies where libertarian oligarchs get to do absolutely whatever they want and just bring resources in from all over the planet, but they have all the money, they have all the control, they get to do whatever they want in their society. There's still a very strong police state because they want security beyond everything else. And that might be what you would want in a closed off city state where everyone in there gets to do whatever evil shit they want. And so I don't know if that's if that's right wing. Maybe that's the one exception to the anarchy, as it were, or to the decentralization that might lean the other direction. But I would probably be inclined to say he's still in support of an authoritative state higher than anything else in a smaller form, right? And I'm not sure that the United States government and how much the United States government controls obviously is huge, but there can be a total authoritarian state anywhere in the world that is much, much tinier and still more authoritarian. So I don't think it's I don't think that problem gets solved by creating smaller satellite states, is all I am saying. All right, let me check on the chat for just a second, then we will continue here with Peter Thiel. All right.
And you scaled it. And, whereas today, if there was an equivalent of Einstein and he wrote a letter to the White House, it would get lost in the mailroom, and the Manhattan Project is unthinkable. If we call something a moonshot, this is the way Biden talked about, let's say, cancer research. A moonshot in the 60s still meant that you went to the moon. A moonshot now means something completely fictional that's never going to happen. Oh, you need a moonshot for that. It's not like we need an Apollo program. It means it's never, ever going to happen. And so,
but it seems like then you're still in the mode of, for you, as opposed to maybe for some other people in Silicon Valley, the value of populism is in tearing away the veils and illusions. And we're not necessarily in the stage where you're looking to the Trump administration to build to do the Manhattan Project, to do the moonshot. It's more like populism helps us see that it was all fake.
You need to try.
So that is a pretty interesting observation and insight by Ross Douthat, framing it in that way. Populism is the political tool in this sense that exposes all of these problems with the system that someone like Peter Thiel or someone like Mark Andreessen and all of their tech friends can then rush into the void and fill with their ultimately efficient technology. And all of a sudden, you've taken this mass sprawling disaster of a government, and now you've got it lean and mean and doing exactly what it's supposed to do using all of this technology. It's important to remember that the people in that government are not elected by the people. Okay. And so when you are empowering them to make your system efficient, you could be making a huge mistake. Right? Efficiency is not the be all and end all of government performance. Government performance is only and should only be related to how well it is serving the interests of the citizens who are responsible for having set it up. And the government's not doing that. And there are efficient governments that might also not be doing that. And yes, the television can tell you that they spent less money this year than they did last year, or more money this year than last year. None of that matters. All that matters is whether or not they are serving the people. And as far as the money's concerned, we're going to go into some of that later. But it's fake in the first place anyway. The debt's never being paid off. Like, I don't know why Elon Musk, and Elon is probably kayfabing, I understand. I've made the case myself, okay? But getting upset about debt and deficits is just so silly. And that's one of the things that the GOP establishment, when they want to align with MAGA or split parts of MAGA off and replace it with themselves, that's one of the things they go after. Spending, right? It's totally irrelevant. The war is against the global regime and its central bankers. The currency is changing. They are trying to collapse the currency. We might be doing some version of the same on this side of things. They are hopefully attempting to kind of retract all of the money printing. And I think that there are ways to do that. In fact, one of them came up over the weekend. And you know what? Maybe we should just pop into this just for a second, because I thought it was really interesting. And this is not something that I'm going to be able to simply prove to you, unfortunately, but take it for what it's worth and, form whatever opinion feels right. This is a little bit of a sidebar here. So from over the weekend, there is a screenshot of this tweet. Bitcoin Cam says, can anyone explain to me why companies are buying billions of dollars of Bitcoin every week and the price is virtually unchanged over the last 6 months? Explain it to me like I'm 5. That's a great question. Okay, we get these Bitcoin spikes. We get people buying constantly, and the price will just hover at the same place. Trump does Bitcoin stuff. He talks about Bitcoin in public. They bring legislation to help cryptocurrencies, all these things. And the price stays basically the same. So Bastian Sinclair, who I believe is some kind of Bitcoin influencer or something, I don't know what his job is, so apologies to him. I'm sure he's a nice guy. He says, all right, let's break this down like you're 5, but smart. Imagine Bitcoin is a giant cookie jar. Lots of people want cookies, but there are only 21 cookies total. And he chose that number, obviously, because there are 21 million Bitcoin. Every week, big kids, institutions, come along and quietly buy cookies from other kids behind the playground instead of grabbing them from the jar in front of everybody. Okay. So the big money is involved in a private sale where the Bitcoin is transferred from one to the other and it never goes back with the exchange as a medium. This is called OTC, over the counter. It means they do secret cookie trades with kids who already have cookies. So the number of cookies in the jar everyone can see doesn't change much right away. Okay. So the cookie jar looks the same cookie sitting there. But behind the scenes, cookies are moving from weak hands to strong hands. Because it's quiet and secret, it doesn't cause a cookie fight that would push the price up. But eventually, the jar gets emptier and emptier. When too many people want cookies and there aren't enough left to trade secretly, kids have to fight over what's left in the jar. That's when the price jumps because everyone sees the cookies are almost gone. So the price staying the same now just means big kids are still buying quietly. The real cookie fight comes later. Okay. And I think that was all well said and well outlined. Now, the question is, are the weak hands people who have invested huge sums of money in Bitcoin and then are then having that extracted from them in what I believe is drainage, and then that is pushed back out into the Bitcoin market over time to keep down whatever interests are buying in from the exchanges. So is that the flow? This is something I've talked about in the drainage framing for, I don't know, 2.5 years now. This is exactly how something like that would work. And I don't know that that's what's going on here, but I think that there's good reason to believe that it's something like that. And I've suspected that for a while because I've thought about this problem a bunch over the last couple of years. Once I kind of got into Bitcoin and took the approach to Bitcoin that I take, that seemed like one of the strangest aspects of this whole thing, because it seems like there is clear manipulation in that market when it comes to the price and that it's being held artificially down. So there's got to be some explanation for that. And this does seem to align. So let's retreat from that field and get back to Peter Thiel.
Both. And they're very entangled with each other. And I don't know, there's a deregulation of nuclear power. And at some point we'll get back to building, new nuclear power plants or better designed ones, or maybe even fusion reactors. And so, yes, there's a deregulatory, deconstructive part. And then at some point, you actually get to construction, and it's all things like that. So yeah, in some ways you're clearing the field, and then
but you've personally stopped funding politicians.
I'm schizophrenic on this stuff. I think it's incredibly important, and it's incredibly toxic. And so I go back and forth on
incredibly toxic for you personally,
for everybody who gets involved. It's zero sum. It's crazy. And then in some ways,
because everyone hates you and associates you with Trump. Like how is it toxic for you personally?
It's toxic because it's in a zero sum world. The stakes in it feel really, really high, and
you end up having enemies you didn't have before.
It's toxic for all the people who get involved in different ways. There is a political dimension of getting back to the future.
Man, that guy, I don't know how you get to be a billionaire when you talk and think like that. That guy does not seem particularly bright to me. And I don't know if that's just a stutter, an insecurity or something, but he is not expressing very complex or interesting, much less profound thoughts. Okay. I thought it was really interesting talking about the politics and the political donations there, because we just heard that Don Bacon is not going to be running for re-election in the fake midterms next year. Don Bacon was one of the 3 Republican congressmen, along with Juan Ciscomani and Derek Van Orden, who was going to be supported by Peter Thiel. He was supporting 3 congressmen. Don Bacon was one of them. Don Bacon has always been anti-Trump, and now Don Bacon is out of the race. So what can we think about Peter Thiel in that instance? It's pretty strange, isn't it? He talks about these moonshots. He wants this scientific progress, the Manhattan Project. What a brilliant event that was, set up at Bohemian Grove. And then some Jewish communist created a magical bomb out in the desert. Yeah, we can't wait for more things like that to happen, Peter Thiel. That's what we need. Oh, gosh. Okay, let's keep going. Different clip. I wanted to share that one, even though these other 2 are the ones that have received the most talk this week. There we are.
My very specific question for you, right, is that you're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, in technologies of warfare, and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing.
I mean, to be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule.
Well, but again, there are these different gradations of this we can describe, but is this so preposterous, what I've just told you, as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted.
So the slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety. He makes the argument, and this is, again, according to Peter Thiel's version of 1 Thessalonians, and we'll get to that in just a second. But Peter Thiel's idea of who the Antichrist is going to be is someone like Greta Thunberg, okay, who, through her granola advocacy, makes it too hard for people like Peter Thiel to do what they need to do. And it's funny because Douthat actually asks him about a full-blown authoritarian state, and Peter Thiel doesn't even react and say, "Whoa, come on, that's not what we're trying to build here." That was incredible. And there's actually one more moment. I want to go back to this really quickly. Right about here, I think. A little bit. Here we are.
Right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
I mean, isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist.
Wait a second. I hope I didn't miss it.
Would be maybe be using the tools.
That's it right there. Okay. Look at Thiel's reaction when he realizes that this question is going to turn around and suggest that he might be I don't think that he's the Antichrist. I also don't think that that's what the Antichrist is. And, it's so much to unpack from the Judeo side of the Christianity and how the Schofield Bible has changed people's ideas about end times and what these things mean. And then we end up getting this caricature of something, and the caricature becomes, you would call it a simulacrum potentially. It's now totally detached from its original meaning. In fact, it's totally inverted from its original meaning. And that is what people understand to be the meaning and the original meaning, right? That's the only meaning that remains. And so we're kind of already way too far afield when we're this far into the conversation, but it is worth gauging his reactions. So as soon as he realizes where Douthat is going with the question, he begins to shift his physical stance toward Douthat and immediately becomes defensive. Watch it right here.
Technologies of surveillance and technologies of warfare and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like,
as soon as he says that Antichrist might be using the tools, Thiel immediately knows, oh, he's talking about the tools that I create. Okay, man. One more.
For the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would
this is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in
this. Should the
this.
human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also would I also would like us to radically solve these problems.
Right.
And so, it's always, I don't know, transhumanism is this, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body. And there's a critique of, let's say, the trans people in a sexual context, or a transvestite is someone who changes their clothes and cross dresses. And a transsexual is someone where you change your, penis into a vagina. And we can then debate how well those surgeries work. But we want more transformation than that. The critique is not that it's weird and unnatural. It's so pathetically little. And okay, we want more than cross-dressing or changing your sex organs. We want you to be able to change your heart and change your mind and change your whole body. And then Orthodox Christianity, by the way, the critique Orthodox Christianity has of this is these things don't go far enough. Like that transhumanism is just changing your body, but you also need to transform your soul.
Okay, let's just pause it right there. Because what is he talking about? Like the transhumanism doesn't go far enough. You need to transform your soul. Okay, you can do that while still being totally human. All right. So you actually don't need the transhumanism thing at all. It's not that it doesn't go far enough. It's that you are talking about two different domains. And I'm not a biblical scholar, but I'm pretty sure that we're commanded not to mutilate ourselves like that. But hey, Peter Thiel wants it. He wants more of it. Should humans survive? Hard to say. Sure, they were created in God's image, but if God wanted them to stick around, then we wouldn't be able to kill them. Wow, man. I mean, I don't know what else you can take from these comments. If Peter Thiel is still under and always under regime control forever, from the beginning, compromised, obviously the gay thing. Okay. Like that's compromise all the time. And so you got that. You got him doing all these projects for the last 20 years. Not that interesting, not well-spoken, can't deliver many messages, but he does make all of that stuff look horrifying. He couldn't perform the part any better if that's what he is intended to do. And because Trump is moving forward with a company like Palantir, who Peter Thiel is no longer involved with, we're told, is just a sabotage of Trump's work with them. And then what does this mean for JD? And we'll get into that soon too.
And you need to transform your whole self. And so
right, but the other wait. I generally agree with what I think is your belief that religion should be a friend to science and ideas of scientific progress. I think any idea of divine providence has to encompass the fact that we have progressed and achieved and done things that would have been unimaginable to our ancestors. But it still also seems like, the promise of Christianity in the end is you get the perfected body and the perfected soul through God's grace. And the person who tries to do it on their own with a bunch of machines is likely to end up as a dystopian character.
Well, let's articulate this.
And you can have a heretical form of Christianity, that says something else.
I don't know. I think the word nature does not occur once in the Old Testament, and so if you and there is a word in which a sense in which the way I understand the Judeo-Christian inspiration is it is about transcending nature. It is about overcoming things, and the closest thing you can say to nature is that people are fallen, and that's the natural thing in a Christian sense is that you're messed up, and that's true. But there's some ways that with God's help, you are supposed to transcend that and overcome that.
I don't know what to say about all that. I mean, that guy seems absolutely out of his mind. Now, I will attempt to, and I'm not sure if I will be successful, and then you can judge that for yourself. I will attempt to provide one way that he might sound slightly better. Now, he's very hooked on the safety thing, and the company's all about security and whatever. He references 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. Okay, but I'll start at 1. But concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no time that ought be written unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. When they are saying peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall in no wise escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. For ye are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night nor of the darkness. So then let us not sleep as do the rest, but let us watch and be sober. Okay. And so the idea being that we are here in the daylight in front of everybody, and we are going to watch all of this. Okay. So that we cannot be fooled by any of it. We're not going to lull ourselves into a sense of peace and safety without being ever watchful. That's what it says to me. Maybe one of you guys has a better understanding of that. But if that's what it says to Peter Thiel, then maybe he believes that his projects are out there in the light. He is a government contractor, so that's not hidden. There's vast documentation on what the programs do. The programs are widely available and widely used, so you could find out people's personal experience about them. Maybe that's the point he's making. Maybe he sees himself that way. If that provides some context for the rest of the comments, I don't know if I can get that far myself. I don't expect you to, but man, what a strange dude. So he was interviewed by Jordan Peterson a month or so ago, and we talked about that on the podcast. And we talked about Jordan Peterson sitting down with 20 atheists and getting destroyed by them, unwilling to say that he himself was Christian. This is from the Piers Morgan show. I think it was yesterday. Jordan Peterson seems unwell, to say the very least.
If you tell the truth, what should happen as a consequence of the truth makes itself manifest in the world. And that's the best possible outcome. But it's also the most adventurous thing that you can do, the most exciting thing you can do, hands down. There's nothing that compares to it. That pathway of maximal responsibility, voluntary responsibility, and truth. And I understand that deeply at a religious level. I understand that that's the symbolic world on which our productive and peaceful culture was properly founded. And I've seen the effect of communicating that to people, thousands of people. And it's a great privilege to serve that role, but it's also overwhelming. You know, I think it is one of the things that made me, I was ill for quite a long time. And I think that that was part of the reason, just seeing this, like this malaise so deep, and that's also so easily addressed in a sense. You know, it's that paradoxical combination of depth of suffering and ease of rectification, you know, and I kind of understood what the conservatives have done wrong all along. You know, they tend to moralize in a finger-wagging way. You know, you should do this, you should do that. And there's truth in that, you know, that imposition of mature structure on immature hedonism and disunion and disorientation.
That man has lost his mind. That's sad, honestly, to watch a guy do that on, I mean, it's hard to call it national television anymore, but Piers Morgan has a widely enough watched show. I guess he's some kind of TV star. I've never seen a whole episode of his show. I doubt that there's anyone on the planet who's ever seen a whole episode of his show. I don't know why you would do that to yourself, but I suppose that people out there might do that. Regardless, I just see it in clips on the internet. Jordan Peterson is going to be seen by millions of people on the internet bawling his eyes out in an interview because he can't talk like a normal person about something he's discussed thousands of times, which is the work that he does for young men and blah, blah, blah. The hand stuff, the religious stuff, all the holier than thou stuff that he's done, all the history. He knows everything. Always Jordan Peterson knows everything. And what a disaster this has become. I don't know how anybody can take that guy seriously. And then he even brings in the old trope about conservatives. Oh, they just want all this power so they can shut things down in a finger wagging way. Oh, dude, shut up. Aren't you a conservative, Jordan Peterson? Isn't that what we've been led to believe? Isn't that why you have a show on the Daily Weimar? What is going on in your life, Jordan Peterson? I mean, I won't assume that he's back on drugs. What's going on? What does Ben Shapiro have on him? Are the screws being tightened on people like Jordan Peterson and potentially on people like Peter Thiel, by the way? These people are looking insane. Maybe it's just a level of exposure, and then we could have recognized it earlier. And obviously, I've been talking about Jordan Peterson like this for 3 years now, 3 years. Conservative, Jordan Peterson, aligned with conservatives, aligned with MAGA, looking out for your best interests? No, just a standard global regime hack and stooge, a very serious intellectual who's got his World Economic Forum alternative now, ARC, hanging out with Eric and Brett Weinstein and what's his name? Douglas Murray and James Lindsay. What a crowd of losers attempting to make it look like neoconservatism is actually pro-American and it's more MAGA and it's more conservative than anything we could ever do. These people are absolutely bonkers. Let's talk about another one of those. Here is the $100 million man from Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk. Now, the War Room is broadcasting this. I'll say this as a preface here. Charlie Kirk is about to bring on a man named Nate Morris, who is campaigning to be the Republican replacement in Mitch McConnell's seat. Okay. And there's Daniel Cameron and another guy already running. It seems like Scott Jennings is going to be thrown into that mix. Scott Jennings seems like a guy that Trump just might put in there next year. But right now we have Nate Morris. So War Room had Nate Morris on a few days before this clip, maybe Friday or Saturday, most recent. And he says all the right things. He says all the things that you would expect a Republican establishment, MAGA aligned candidate to say if they want MAGA to come out and vote for them, because obviously there's no way anyone in the Republican establishment could win an election on his or her own without MAGA. So let's just go to this for, we're going to listen to Charlie Kirk and then like a minute of Nate Morris's thing.
Ignored. You guys have been cast aside, and together we can send a message that will be sent around the country. You in the grassroots of this state can say, enough. I'm tired of this false choice. We want to crush the uniparty. We want to end the McConnell mafia, and we're going to send a message to the rest of the country. With that, I want to introduce my friend, Nate Morris, the next senator from the great state of Kentucky.
Charlie, I want to thank you for that incredible introduction. Let's welcome Charlie one more time to the Bluegrass State. We're so honored.
He looks very dainty sitting on that stool.
Charlie knows how to fight, doesn't he? And he fights for us when a lot of people don't want to speak up. And I'm here today because I'm running for the United States Senate, and it wasn't something that I thought I was going to do. And about a year ago, I get a phone call from another hillbilly, J.D. Vance.
Oh.
And he says to me, he said, Nate, you know, McConnell, he's got to go. And maybe you should look at that seat, at running for that seat. Would you be interested in doing that? And I said, you know, J.D., I said, I hadn't really thought about it. I'm a business guy. I'm not a politician. I've never run for office before.
Blah, blah, blah. But I realized, oh, J.D. Vance is saying I can be a senator. Maybe I should do that. These people, man. So his claim to fame is that he's buddies with J.D. Vance. Well, J.D. Vance, his mentor was Peter Thiel. Thiel supported Vance and Blake Masters in 2022. JD in Ohio for the Senate, Blake Masters in Arizona for the Senate. Arizona's elections are fake and fraudulent, of course, but Blake Masters did not run a particularly good campaign, did not seem like a particularly interesting political candidate. He ran for the House again and lost to Abe Hamadeh. Again, fake elections, of course, so take that for what it's worth. But we have JD and Blake Masters. We have JD then with Vivek. He's one of JD's best friends. JD Vance named his child Vivek after Vivek Ramaswamy. Okay. So we have, why are we having all of these JD Vance pals installed in our government? Who's choosing that? Did you choose it? I didn't choose it. Okay. We're just giving these people because Donald Trump writes, JD Vance is going to be my running mate in this fake campaign on Truth Social 2 days after the assassination event, which was itself 2 days after Peter Thiel and Reid Hoffman got into an argument at a billionaire meeting about Trump becoming a martyr. Okay. Just because Trump named Vance a running mate in his fake campaign leading up to the fake election. Now we all pretend JD Vance is vice president. That doesn't mean that like JD Vance gets to just tap on the head all of the new winners out there. We're just going to have all of JD Vance's friends in office in every state. We can find a friend of JD Vance. Oh, I'm a hillbilly just like JD Vance. JD Vance is not a hillbilly. You can read his book, Hillbilly Elegy, and immediately determine within 3 pages that he didn't write it. Okay? Don't know what to tell you. He is a created character, much like Barack Obama. In fact, he's a uniparty right, Barack Obama. Now, if something has magically shifted and changed, and JD Vance is literally a new guy, then fine, all bets are off. But otherwise, I mean, maybe he was just deep cover this whole time, appearing exactly as a uniparty right Obama, and he just isn't. Great acting. So enough people groveled when JD was named, and then enough people groveled when Donald Trump won the fake election, and then when they got inaugurated, and people were just groveling and groveling and groveling. And it was just going to be JD Vance 2028. It's got to be JD Vance. And then Donald Trump steps in and says, hey, you know what? I might stick around through 2028. Bannon says the same thing. We don't need to worry about 2028. That's what the messaging is. Coming from Trump, coming from Bannon, anti-Vance messaging, okay? Because the regime, the uniparty right, pushing Vance 2028. Vance, he's the logical replacement. That's who we need there. And Trump and Bannon say, nah, I'll just stick around. Trump, it'll be Trump in 2028, right? What is that dynamic in that sense? Okay, that is an anti-JD move. And here's another one. Where is it? Where is my link? I have destroyed myself. Here we are. Just a slight delay, a hold for processing. Actually, you know what? While we're already paused, before we get into a new thing, I see Doc from Amish PA, $5 in the chat. Nate, Blake, Vivek, and JD, just some humble attention farmers. And you are exactly right. That was a good case of attention farming. They are farming attention. Charlie Kirk is out there farming attention for him. And so what they're going to do is use the Turning Point apparatus to make Nate Morris look like the guy, whether or not he's the guy. And the primary is what, 9 months away? Who else is going to come out? I would suggest that the TV character Scott Jennings will be the person put in there in a very similar role to what Dr. Oz was used for. And then we might see a fake election of a Democrat in Kentucky. They have a Democrat governor already. Their elections are fake. Mitch McConnell is going away. They need a uniparty option in there. So what are we going to get? Elections are fake. When you remember that elections are fake, and the analysis on any of this stuff begins with the understanding that the elections are fake, and this is just a selection on either side, and then a power struggle potentially to figure out which side wins, but it's all known in advance if it's the regime system. And then there might be a chaos injected into the system in some way by whatever control Trump and the military have over these elections, or simply stopping the election fraud system from functioning. But it seems like we've taken the really slow approach. Anyhow, this is from Newsmax. Eric Trump says he's open to political office. During his Time Person of the Year interview in December, then President-elect Donald Trump was asked about a potential family political dynasty. Trump responded by mentioning several family members, including his middle son, Eric. Eric is very capable and a different type than Don Jr., Trump told Time. More than 6 months later, Eric Trump told Financial Times the political path for a family dynasty would be an easy one. The real question is, do you want to drag other members of your family into it? Would I want my kids to live the same experience over the last decade that I've lived? You know, if the answer was yes, I think the political path would be an easy one, meaning I think I could do it. And by the way, I think other members of our family could do it too. And so good for him. But what does this mean in relation to JD 2028? Well, it means that's not going to happen. So not only do we have the prime Trump, we also have backup Trumps. So then why then do we need JD to be the heir apparent and the standard bearer for MAGA? He is not a standard bearer for MAGA. He's never been a standard bearer for MAGA. He says MAGA aligned things from a GOP establishment perspective. I said yesterday on Telegram, JD Vance says all the right things the way all the wrong people say them. Okay? That's just what it is. And you can watch the same effect on Fox News, but the problem is people are in that echo chamber where it's Fox or it's Rogan or it's the Daily Weimar or it's Dave Rubin, somebody talking to them all day about what they think it means to be conservative. All those guys are liberals and leftists and globalists, but they listen to all this stuff during the day, Fox News and the rest of it. They hear a certain messaging, all of that, the corporate messaging delivered directly from the screen to them with no pass through. It's just, here you go. This is what you're supposed to know. And they just take it all in. And then someone like JD analyzes it for them in a way that makes them feel tough and strong and hopeful. And they're like, that's our guy. Okay. That's got to stop. That's just too dumb to even contend with. How are we still doing that? Pretending that what's on television is real? No. That these people are actually like looking out for our best interests, trying to convince us to think for ourselves? No. It's attention farming through and through the whole way. I don't know why anyone would be convinced by any of this. And because of that, it's worth at least considering that elements of it are not all just planned and executed by Donald Trump and people who are friendly to the Donald Trump and MAGA movement. Okay. Why would anyone assume that? As though just all the war is over. Well, nothing's been fixed, but hey, the war's over. We won. Now we just impose our will on the enemy. Well, we might impose our will on the enemy. The problem is most people's will is still just to get Republicans elected. Okay. And that's not going to get us anywhere. All right. Let us continue.
If you tell the truth.
That's not it at all. I double-clicked when I should not have double-clicked. Okay. Here we are. Let's take a listen to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. tell Tucker Carlson what Donald Trump was doing while selecting his fantasy team administration.
With President Trump is that he really knows how to pick talent. And he, and I'm not talking about me, but the other people on there, when you sit in those cabinet meetings, and every one of those people is incredibly erudite and just fluid in the way that they speak and very, very comfortable. And they're one of the things that President Trump did when he picked the cabinet, and I was on the transition team, so I watched what he was doing. For every of one of the positions that he picked, he wanted to see 3 clips of them performing on TV. And so, you know, he's very conscious of the way of that these people are going to be out selling his program to the public, and that he needs people who are, you know, good salespeople, not only good administrators, but that they can communicate a message to the public.
How about that? Trump's priority was selecting television characters. Isn't that amazing? Does that mean that they are all necessarily good guys? No, it just means that they're going to go out and communicate Trump's message well with whatever authority they are actually given, which may be the authority of their office in full, or it may not be. Okay. And we don't know. And those things could be going on behind the scenes. And so when everybody's talking about the television characters and how great it is that Tulsi's going to be DNI, and Cash is going to be FBI director, Bongina is going to be the assistant over there. Who cares? They're delivering a message that they are told to deliver, okay? And that they've become trusted in some sense by MAGA and Republicans might help that message be delivered and be accepted by the audience, all right? These are familiar voices talking to us. Are they actually running things in these agencies, or are they just television characters? Who's to say? But we have to analyze them as television characters because Donald Trump analyzes them as television characters. And that is one of the big parts of why he selected them. We heard about Pam Bondi. She replaced Matt Gaetz on the fantasy team, but already we knew that Todd Blanche and Emile Beauvais were doing the work before she got there because she's a television character meant to communicate. Okay. And maybe she's a wonderful lawyer and maybe she's doing a great job at Attorney General. I'm just using it as an example. Okay. It's entirely possible that these agencies are run from levels below in all the most important ways. And there is just a matter of public communication to the American public and then communication directly to Donald Trump about what the agency is doing so that they can go back and forth. Trump is responsive to the public. Then Trump tells the agency heads or the agency heads and the team around them that is executing the mission what exactly the mission is. But their primary purpose is to communicate directly to the public. And we are seeing that. And some of them are great at it. And some of them have had their problems. We watched Tammy Bruce last week talk about how the United States is the greatest country in the world next to Israel. So, hey. All right, let's get into the major political news of the day. The Build Back Better. I mean, big, beautiful bill. BBB, just like Build Back Better. Now, will it all come through? Will Mike Johnson's package finally become accepted at the highest levels? I'm still doubtful of that, but it might. Okay, we might see this whole thing go down to the end, or we'll see people protest against the passage of this bill, and there'll be some issue in the Congress. Who knows? But with Trump doing a rally tomorrow night, it seems like they're probably going to get it done, and then he will be celebrating that at the rally. But maybe he's just going to be, or did I say tomorrow, Thursday night? Maybe he's just going to be counter-messaging to their failure to deliver. Bannon said on War Room a few days ago that if it doesn't get done by the 4th of July, it might get pushed back for months and months and months. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene offered the possibility of a push for a continuing resolution at the end of September, suggesting that is what people are hoping to get to. And that wouldn't be any surprise at all. And we would just then get a new conversation about Mike Johnson's package and the debt ceiling and all the rest of it. Now, the debt ceiling has become a big problem in the big, beautiful bill conversation because Elon Musk and others have made it a problem. And fine, I get that in a real world where things are operating properly, we have a government that's doing the work to the will of the people. We might have concerns about the debt ceiling, okay? It's entirely rational to have concerns about the debt ceiling. We should never go into debt. How about that? Okay, so I'm totally down with the fiscal conservative principles. And I talked about this a month ago, almost 4 weeks ago, early June, the last time some of this came up, that debt and deficits don't matter. I kind of went through it earlier, so I'm not going to go through it again, but these points are being brought up, and especially a character like Elon Musk, who people already suspect is primarily a public communicator, manipulating narratives, operating in a certain way, pretending to be anti-Trump without being anti-Trump. You know, we saw it a month ago. They immediately made up and made it mostly better. They still have to be able to fight a little bit because we needed this rerun to really land with the Trump-Musk feud. But otherwise, what do we have here? We have an opportunity to see how other people react. Will they pile on with Elon Musk and against Donald Trump? Well, that's good for us to know that. Thomas Massey's doing that so far. Will he be the only one? Guess we'll find out. Anyway, The big, beautiful bill was passed through the Senate today, and here's a look at how it happened.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being evenly divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative. The bill as amended is passed.
Okay. So with that, J.D. Vance has cast the decisive vote on this massive spending bill in the Senate. And you say, well, of course he's got to do that. J.D. Vance is Trump's right-hand man, and he gets to cast that tie-breaking vote as vice president. So that's what he's going to do. Okay. So it just magically became a 50-50 until J.D. Vance stepped in? Seems doubtful. There were different people who were opposed to the bill earlier in the week, then are opposed to it now. When it comes to the Senate, Lisa Murkowski actually voted for it. Susan Collins voted against. Lisa Murkowski had to vote for it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been 50-50. So you made Lisa Murkowski look at least a little ridiculous, unless, of course, she's got some payoff for some Alaskan interest or whatever. You know, the point is, when the story of the big, beautiful bill passing is ultimately told and recorded, it'll be J.D. Vance who cast the final vote, the decisive vote. J.D. Vance did that in the Senate. Okay, so what is that going to look like in future political discussions if people sour on the big, beautiful bill, if it never passes, if it was never meant to pass? Well, now J.D. Vance owns the big, beautiful bill. Couldn't have happened without him. Congratulations, JD. You break it, you bought it. It does feel like that. By the way, while we're on the subject of JD, one more. This is an endorsement of JD Vance directly to JD Vance's wife, Usha, delivered by No Name's daughter, Meghan McCain.
Our first lady in a few years. And I find that a very exciting potential, possibility. I wanted to know, is that stressful for you? Is it exciting? Is that something you think about? Is this something everyone is asking you everywhere you go?
Well, people do ask about it, but I guess the way 3 years ago, or maybe it was 4 years ago at this point, I had absolutely no intention of leading any sort of life in politics. It really is that rapid. And then when we moved our kids to school in this area, it was with no intention whatsoever of JD running for a new office. And so my attitude is that this is a 4-year period where I have a set of responsibilities and to my family, to myself, to obviously the country. And that's really what I'm focused on. I'm not plotting out next steps or really trying for anything after this. And in a dream world, eventually I'll be able to live in my home and kind of continue my career and all those sorts of things. And if that happens in 4 years, I understand. If that happens at some other point in the future, I understand. Just sort of along for the ride and enjoying it while I can.
JD Vance 2028. Meghan McCain is on board. Now, what does it mean that Meghan McCain is on board? Does that condemn JD to a life of GOPE con Inc. servitude? Maybe. I don't know that to be true, but it ain't looking great. Just saying. We are rhino hunting. That is what we are doing. The neocons and the rhinos have to be discovered. That's what this process is for. Okay, so if we're not doing it and we're not considering it, then we are not doing our part. All right. What is it that we are supposed to be doing? Just showing up to vote every 2 years? That's what a lot of people do. And then they focus on elections. Oh, I'm going to go register voters with Scott Pressler. Okay. Is that it? We could be pushing these things, and we must be pushing these things. How about Meghan McCain's show title, Citizen McCain? Oh, so clever. So clever. Okay, so back to the big, beautiful bill. It's definitely not Build Back Better. And Trump's definitely not pushing the Build Back Better bill to expose what these people actually wanted to do. That is definitely not happening. Trump has definitely made the best bill he could ever make and ever want. And that might be possible as well. Maybe these people will sign their own death warrants. Kind of doubt it, but it's possible. Okay. It's definitely not Build Back Better, though. We have to know that. It's not that kind of spending meant to totally crash the financial system. Okay, so this is Zero Hedge from the other day. What was this? Saturday. The Senate version of the big, beautiful bill is out, and it's 940 pages. And then he updated. Senate Democrats have decided to force the clerk to read the entire reconciliation bill. And that is Punch Bowl reporting. So 940 pages to be read by the clerk. It took them 16 straight hours. That's hilarious. That's a humiliation ritual to some degree. Then they had issues with the Senate parliamentarian who is still there from Harry Reid through Mitch McConnell and now still there with John Thune, who the president made the Senate majority leader back right after the election at some point. I think it was just in mid-November that he was pushing for that. People wanted Rick Scott or some others. And Trump was like, no, it'll be Thune. Thune will be fine. He'll do whatever he's supposed to do, and that will be fine. So Thune has not gotten rid of the Senate parliamentarian, and the Senate parliamentarian was throwing a few monkey wrenches into the gears over the course of this week as they were trying to put together the passage of this here big, beautiful bill. Thank goodness they got JD in there at the last moment. Otherwise, it would have gone down in flames. People are all like emotional about the big, beautiful bill, like just fighting with each other online, or not even fighting with each other, fighting with complete and total strangers that may well be bots online. Oh, how can you say that about the big, beautiful bill? Don't you care about deficits? You're not a conservative. What are we doing? Okay, let's go to Mike Johnson and see what he has to say about his package. This is X, formerly Twitter. My joint statement with leader Scalise, the GOP majority whip, and chairwoman Lisa McClain, and the whip is Tom Emmer, and chairwoman Lisa McClain on Senate passage of the one big, beautiful bill. So now it's the OBBB. OBBB. The House will work quickly to pass the one big, beautiful bill that enacts President Trump's full America First agenda by the 4th of July. The American people gave us a clear mandate. And after 4 years of Democrat failure, we intend to deliver without delay. Republicans were elected to do exactly what this bill achieves: secure the border, make tax cuts permanent, unleash American energy dominance, restore peace through strength, cut wasteful spending, and return to a government that puts America first. This bill is President Trump's agenda, and we are making it law. House Republicans are ready to finish the job and put the one big, beautiful bill on President Trump's desk in time for Independence Day. Okay, Mike Johnson, you have sold your package as hard as any man has ever sold it. Will you be successful? I guess we'll find out. So we have all of those priorities listed by Mike Johnson. One of them is making the tax cuts permanent. And I guess, okay, like as a half measure, fine. But also no taxes, okay? No taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security. You got to go the distance. You got to go the distance. Sooner or later, you got to go the distance. So if this is a half measure, then fine for now, and we can shrug and say, whatever. You know, it's just status quo continuing. So there's no point in being particularly upset about that either way. But some of these other priorities can be achieved in other directions and are being achieved in other directions. And I don't believe that we need a big spending bill. What we need is to understand that the government is in full illegitimate and does not have the authority to spend our money in any way whatsoever. And that's when it's, again, important to remember that the money's fake and that the people who print that fake money are the people with whom we are at war. Okay. So if we commit to spending a bunch more of their money that's not going to get paid back, and they want us to do that so that they can still keep some leverage somehow, is that worth it? Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't have a feeling about this one way or the other. I think we're going to find out more as time goes on. And I, again, think it's entirely possible that this thing won't pass, and it's going to be who's going to get blamed for it. Okay. That'll be the question, because once again, this is a magnificent sifter. We are seeing people sifted out right out in the open, and we should be happy when that happens. But for some reason, people are not happy when that happens because they don't want anybody sifted. They want to they want to protect everybody with an R next to their name and just make sure the people with the D's next to their name lose. So therefore, RINO hunting is counterproductive to them. They worry that we're going after our important allies who we really need. Trump needs these votes. And it's often, almost always, the people who cannot stop badgering everybody about trusting Trump and cannot stop badgering everybody about trusting the plan, which they don't know, just so happens to be the same people. Again, crazy, isn't it? It's almost like they're doing something different than they pretend to be doing, since they quite clearly aren't doing the thing they pretend to be doing, which is bringing truth to the American people, because they don't even tell the truth themselves. They also don't exercise any principles, much less first principles, and they don't have the slightest clue about logic. So what are they doing? Clearly something else, right? It's crazy. And then they go after the people who are doing things. Isn't it weird? Isn't it weird? And isn't it also weird that no one holds that behavior accountable? Just saying. Fox News from today. Senate passes Trump's big, beautiful bill after marathon vote-a-rama. President Trump's $3.3 trillion budget bill advances with near total GOP unity, while the Democrats warn of a nuclear option. Oh my goodness, there's a nuclear threat emanating in the Democratic caucus. Senate Republicans rallied to send President Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill back to the House, notching a major victory in their record-shattering march toward getting the legislation signed into law. Record-shattering. Wow. Nearly every Republican in the chamber coalesced to advance Trump's mega bill, except for Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who then promptly announced that he was not going to be running for re-election. Rand Paul of Kentucky. Isn't that weird? Massey, Rand Paul, Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell as the overriding force of Kentucky politics, especially on the uniparty right side. And still somehow, Thomas Massey and Rand Paul are like the most independent guys. How does it happen? Susan Collins chose not to support, as I said. The bill now heads to the House, where fiscal hawks in the House Freedom Caucus are frustrated with what they say are shallow spending cuts, and moderates are concerned over cuts to Medicaid. All have warned that they may not support the bill. Still, Republican leaders have made it clear they intend to have the bill on Trump's desk by Friday. Many House Republicans, including Speaker Mike Johnson, called on the Senate to change as little as possible. A product that could pass the House was front of mind for some Republicans as the day dragged on. Okay, so we're going to get all of the drama in the House, and then we will figure it out once and for all. Holy moly, some Rumble rants and some subscriptions. So let's go through those, and then we will get back into the big, beautiful bill. MH Smoke Fan, $10. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate your package, opinion/show. Thank you, I think. But let's be very clear that my package has never been a part of this show or of my public persona in any way. And I suspect it will remain that way forever. Starborn gifted 5 subscriptions. Thank you very much. And another one after that, apparently. Thank you very much for that one too. So I guess 6. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for all the help you do in feeding signal-oriented content into the Telegram stream. Team Smooth, $4. A nice round 4. The word package will never be the same, especially if joined with a descriptive term for the rest of my life. And I appreciate that that has happened to you. And I think about it that way myself. So it's more fun this way, I guess. Okay, let's continue. Donald Trump had himself a big celebration today on Truth Social. He has begun launching off some extremely long posts lately. Almost all of our great Republicans in the United States Senate have passed our one big beautiful bill. It is no longer a House bill or a Senate bill. It's everyone's bill. There is so much to be proud of, and everyone got a major policy win. But the biggest winner of them all will be the American people, who will have permanently lower taxes, higher wages, and take-home pay, secure borders, and a stronger and more powerful military. Additionally, Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security benefits are not being cut, but are being strengthened and protected from the radical, destructive Democrats by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse from those programs. We can have all of this right now, but only if the House GOP unites, ignores its occasional quote-unquote grandstanders, you know who you are, Thomas Massey, and does the right thing, which is sending this bill to my desk. We are on schedule. Let's keep it going and be done before you and your family go on a July 4th vacation. The American people need and deserve it. They sent us here to get it done. Our country is going to explode with massive growth, even more than it already has since I was reelected. Between the growth, this bill, our tariffs, and more, the one big beautiful bill sets the United States down a fiscal path by greatly reducing our federal deficit and setting us on course for enormous prosperity in the new and wonderful golden age of America. To all my GOP friends in the House, stay united, have fun, and vote yay. God bless you all. Yeah, and he's not endorsing Kanye West right there. At least I don't think so. Who knows? Maybe vote yay will be the slogan of 2028, and it'll be Kanye instead of Jay-Z. I don't know. Or maybe him creating that Hitler song will make that impossible and only entertaining. It would be entertaining. It would be very entertaining. Someone in the chat earlier, I can't remember who, asked whether President Trump would exercise a line item veto. And we are told that under the regime system, the line item veto is not allowed. And let me just pull something up about that, because I want to answer this correctly. We actually did a clip last week with Patty Murray talking to Russ Vought about how the administration was going to get around various elements of the spending packages. So at the federal level, the line item veto is not allowed. Here's why. In 1996, Congress passed the Line Item Veto Act, granting the president the authority to cancel specific spending provisions or tax items while approving the rest. However, in the landmark case, Clinton versus the city of New York, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down that law in a 6-3 decision. Justice Stevens explained that this power gave the president the ability to unilaterally amend or repeal parts of statutes, violating the presentment clause of Article 1, Section 7, which outlines how a bill becomes a law. Now, I don't think that Justice Stevens was in his right mind there. Okay. If a president can veto something, which the president can do, and the House is unable then to get the 2/3 majority, or I think it's 3/4 majority, to send it back to the president to pass it like with a veto proof majority. If the president is able to veto, then that is already an effective line item veto if the president requires it to be. Okay. And so what happens if they pass the BBB and President Trump doesn't sign it? I think that's a low probability possibility, just to be clear. But what if he says, you know what? We got to make all these rescissions. I'm going to use the line item veto here, 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 and here. And he's going to challenge this Supreme Court decision. This is exactly the sort of Supreme Court decision one would expect to be challenged. And I was going with ChatGPT there. I am sorry that I did not pull that up. But if a president can veto a piece of legislation in its entirety for any reason, then he already has an effective line item veto if he chooses to use it. Okay. He could simply say to them, remove that, remove that, remove that, remove that, remove that, and then I will sign this bill. But otherwise, it's going to be vetoed. So that's an effective line item veto. And we will see how that ends up playing out in the future. I would expect that this fight will be fought. Okay. We talk often about the court decisions and all of the lawfare on both sides. And I don't mean that our side wages lawfare, but certainly is responsive to that lawfare and has to be. And all of that is used to get the lines painted on the field, all the rules written down in the rule book, so we know exactly where things stand, and then we can operate. These seem like the exact sort of pro-Constitution Supreme Court challenges to former precedent that Donald Trump would and should be bringing. So I would expect we're going to see a fight on this. Russ Vought talked last year in his interview with Tucker Carlson. Great interview. Russ Vought's a very interesting guy. He talked about rescissions. He talked about impoundment. When do we think that those things will be used? I would suggest that it'll be used with the BBB. And maybe that's all Trump has intended the whole time. I'm going to get the House and the Senate to pass this massive piece of legislation. I'm going to promote the hell out of that legislation. And then at the end of it, I'm going to go through and get rid of all the things that the American people don't want in that legislation. And then what are they going to do about it? What would they do about it? Go to the Supreme Court to challenge the line item veto right there? Would they win? Don't think so. Again, I don't know if this is going to happen, but I think that these are possible routes, and we should have our minds open to them and be watchful for them over the next few days, because anything could happen. Okay. We can get the House passage of that bill, get all of these people signed on to all of their heinous spending that is the result of their own behind closed doors negotiations with donors and lobbyists and media figures and the rest of it. That's how the uniparty operates. That's how the regime operates. Did Trump put his provisions in, allow the uniparty to write the rest of this bill, force them to pass it, and then at the end of the process, begin striking out all the things that he does not want? I would love to see it. I suppose you would love to see it too, I'm guessing. So we can be hopeful for that. I don't know that it's going to happen, but hey, man, people talking about it would be probably a benefit to the Trump cause if that is what he intends to do. And at the very least, people learn about these different ways that the rules have been shifted and changed in order to support the regime and the implementation of that uniparty agenda here in the good old US of A. Okay, let us go down. So Elon started getting upset again about the deficits, started talking about his third political party. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find, there was a rather hilarious tweeted response to that today, showing what Elon's party would look like. And it's basically all the people that he interacts with on Twitter. Here we are. All right, let me just download this quickly. Hold for processing. All right. Now I have a proper visual aid. So this is Bannon. And, you know, the Bannon-Elon thing is very famous and out there. Bannon does interviews about it. He talks about Elon all the time, always says terrible things about Elon, even though they were in the first Trump administration together. And I would suspect that their interests are still aligned, although, you know, Elon's a bit of a wild card and all good. Bannon's playing the bad cop when it comes to Elon, and he's doing a great job of it because Trump can't do the whole thing. Trump can't sell the anti-Elon story the way Steve Bannon can, okay? Because Trump has to be more mindful of their relationship and how that relationship is perceived publicly, whereas Steve Bannon has no such restriction. It's okay if the public believes that Steve Bannon hates Elon Musk, whether or not it's true, in a way that would not be the case if it were Donald Trump. So Steve Bannon gets to go be bad cop, the anti-Elon Musk. And so he says today, America Party, founded by a non-American, and Elon Musk is South African. And this is Bad Hombre, who did wonderful Twitter work during the Ron DeSantis op on the good side. He said the leadership team of Elon Musk's America Party has just been announced. And so he's got Mark Cuban, the chick that from the Babylon Bee, I think, who said she's having Elon Musk's baby or something, Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, Ian Miles Chong, Andrew Yang, the former Democrat who used to run for president, the guy who wants universal basic income because technology's going to replace everything. Tom Tillis, one of the Krasensteins, and then Mario Nawfal, who hosts all of the Twitter spaces. Doesn't look like a very strong political party, just saying. So let's go to Donald Trump and his response to this Elon Musk business. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, I'm going to do one of these Rumble ads. And this ad is for $17.75 coffee. If you haven't tried it, you got to get one of those starter kits before they run out. The $17.75 starter kit includes the bold dark roast, the smooth medium roast, and the Vitality mushroom coffee for clear energy and laser focus without the crash. Single origin, small batch, toxin-free, and mold-free. Plus, they're also including in the starter kit a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's political opinions, and a black 1775 tumbler that says, I don't take life advice or caffeine from a woke, see which, $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler alert, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something, just like Rumble does. Start your day with coffee that actually backs what you believe. All righty then. Okay, so to Donald Trump's post on Elon Musk. Elon Musk knew long before he so strongly endorsed me for president that I was strongly against the EV mandate. It is ridiculous and was always a major part of my campaign. Electric cars are fine, but not everyone should be forced to own one. Elon may get more subsidy than any human being in history by far, and without subsidies, Elon would probably have to close up shop and head back home to South Africa. No more rocket launches, satellites, or electric car production, and our country would save a fortune. Perhaps we should have Doge take a good hard look at this. Big money to be saved. And yes, there is big money to be saved. And you know what's funny? Marjorie Taylor Greene just started talking about how there was like $9.9 billion in the big, beautiful bill for the Mars project. We're going to go to Mars at a cost of $10 billion. And she was talking about how utterly ridiculous that is. And it is utterly ridiculous. Okay. We're not going to Mars. We don't need to go to Mars. Our planet here is going to be just fine. Okay. And so we're seeing that as a little hint. Trump got rid of the NASA administrator that he had named, a friend of Elon Musk, we are told, Jared Isaacman, another tech guy, the crypto guy, but he just wasn't cut out for it. And one of the names rumored to take that slot, by the way, is General Stephen Quast, who is a major supporter of Badlands and has been for myself personally. So that will be very interesting if that happens. But Trump is talking about what happens if this money goes away, then there's no more rocket launches for Elon Musk. What will happen there? What is Doge now? Doge and Elon Musk have become simultaneous, but Doge now, the Department of Government Efficiency, is just Russ Vogt, making the government more efficient. And what if Russ Vogt brings to Donald Trump's desk a massive binder full of all the ways that the big, beautiful bill is causing problems, and these are the things that must be removed through rescission or impoundment or a line item veto or whatever else. They want to fund their government. And what they mean by their government is the totality of the administrative state. Okay. That's how they operated the government under the fake president, Joe Biden. And they told the American public that the president, Joe Biden, was doing all of those things. But of course he wasn't. And we've got the auto pen and we've got the dementia and we've got these stories finally becoming accepted by a mainstream audience. Okay. We were saying these things the entire time. I never once called Joe Biden the president. It says at the end of my show every day, Joe Biden will never be president, is not president, and will never be, and was not president. Every show. Okay. So these ideas have been out there that none of what Joe Biden was doing was legitimate. Okay. The administrative state, to the extent that the federal government was running things, that was the level at which it was running things. It wasn't Joe Biden. It was levels beneath that in terms of our perception, but levels more toward the heart of the deep state even. Okay. Because the administrative state is key, just like it is in every communist regime. And that is what we have. Sad to say, right? But we have government control over everything, including and especially the corporations and the means of production. And the 14th Amendment allowed them to do that because it gave the government the ability to access all business and all private transactions. So had to make sure that there was no slavery. And they just wound up making more slavery. Oh man, this provision that we put in to end slavery has instead made everyone slaves. Who could see that coming? Oh well, reelect us next year. Polymathanon in the chat, 5 subscriptions gifted. And thank you very much. AJC number 3 did the same thing. And thank you very much. Everybody's being awfully supportive today, even though I am not up to my full capacity today. Okay, let us continue. Donald Trump spoke about Elon Musk and Doge this morning.
Elon Musk. Who? What happened to Elon Musk? Nothing. He's upset he's losing his EV mandate, and he's very upset about things, but he could lose a lot more than that. I can tell you right now. Hey, Elon can lose a lot more than that.
So Elon Musk could lose a lot more than just the EV mandate. And Trump is obviously right when he talks about the fact that he campaigned on removing the EV mandate. Is it possible that Elon Musk is only mad about the EV mandate, and he is so mad about it that he is going against Donald Trump, who he has supported vociferously for nearly 2 years? And I suppose it's more like 1 year very formally and publicly, but behind the scenes, he was obviously headed in that direction for quite a long time. Okay, so Elon knew the entire time the EV mandate would be gone. There's absolutely no way that at any point Elon thought the EV mandate was going to be in there. And Trump says it over and over again. Okay. So there's no way they could be fighting over an EV mandate. If they're fighting, it's over something else. Are they fighting over something else? And if so, why isn't Donald Trump telling us about that thing? Instead, he's only telling us about the EV mandate. And that's probably because the whole thing is nonsense. And he needs there to be this other momentum pushing against the big, beautiful bill. Otherwise, the wrong people wouldn't go in on that, thinking that they have some ground cover and some support from on high, Elon Musk at the top of the ex-formerly Twitter food chain, controlling the public conversations all the time on a censored platform. Is Elon a good guy? Maybe. Okay. But Twitter's not a good platform. But it still does control the public conversation. And that's to the detriment of the public conversation, I would say. Okay. Let's continue. Trump goes in on Elon Musk again, this time from down in Florida, as he stood beside Riggedy Meatball himself, Ron DeSantis. The sound on that was terrible, and so I apologize. But he said Doge is about savings. If Doge is going to look into Elon Musk, then we're going to save a fortune. And I apologize for those on the audio podcast only who got absolutely nothing out of that. Scott Bro is now a monthly supporter. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And guys, if you would, in the chat, if you're watching on Rumble, if you're watching on YouTube, just go ahead and hit the thumbs up. At least theoretically, that will be helpful at some point. Theoretically. Sometimes theoretically is all we can do. Okay, let us continue. Where are we? Looking okay on time. Not too bad. We're hanging in there. Okay, so this is a really interesting post from a man named Chris Langan. Okay, and Chris Langan for some time was like the highest IQ man in the world. Okay, we don't need to get into a thing about IQ, which is a kind of ridiculous, worldly oriented measure that makes people who don't know how to make it through the simple steps of their day seem like they're utter geniuses. Now we have a new highest IQ ever, some Twitter Asian who's got a 210 IQ. And he has said over and over again that he believes in God and Jesus Christ. And that's all very good. And it's also good for the public to understand that it actually is extremely intelligent to believe those things. I used to not believe that myself, and that was very dumb. And I can tell you, I think that the position now in a purely rational and worldly and evidence-based standpoint is far better than atheism, which I think is now ridiculous and just part of the brainwashing that leads us to believe that that our beliefs should only be established on a level of evidence that appeases us. And until we have that evidence in the physical world, in the way that we might have evidence in a court case, to the point where, it can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. If that's the standard for belief in something that says out front, faith is required from you, and evidence like that does not exist, well, then you've got things a little backwards. And I had things pretty backwards back then. So anyhow, Chris Langan goes pretty hard. And he is I don't know if I would call him a race realist, but he says things about the race conversation, about the Zionism conversation that people think are done out of some kind of malice. He is just stating the way he sees things to be. And I do the same thing. So I have mostly appreciation for him. But if you share this around, just fair warning, people are going to potentially complain about him. And I think that is totally unwarranted, but whatever. Information among other information. This is quality feedback. He says, you're not thinking clearly about the national debt Elon, talking directly to Elon Musk. By they, you can only mean the banksters who print central bank funny money. Their funny money is nothing but debt. And because it is mathematically non-repayable, it's a scam. That's how the system was originally defined, and it violates the original precepts of the U.S. Constitution. And if you've listened to this show for the last year and a half or so, you'll have heard me go through all of those elements before. There's no way it can possibly be repaid. It's not real money. This is not the system as it was supposed to be. It's not even the system that exists according to law. And it's totally in violation of the original Constitution. Langan goes on. Legally, this scam is called odious debt. You would have heard that on this podcast before. I think actually someone in the chat tipped me off to that term. It's odious not only because it's a transparent scam that anyone but an idiot can see right through, but because citizens aren't actually consulted on how the funny money is spent. Instead, they brave mounting electoral corruption to elect, quote unquote, representatives who write, promote, and pass legislation that many of them don't even read and about which the public often isn't even told. Remember, the founding fathers of the U.S. designed it as a constitutional republic, not as a democracy. The quote unquote democracy nonsense we hear from the political class is just another scam. This one designed to give our country away to foreign freeloaders and quote unquote investors who will gut it so that the banksters can fold it up and stuff it into their vaults and computers along with the funny money they extort by taxation and create for themselves to hoard and spend hand over fist. After poofing it into existence without producing anything of actual value to the rest of mankind, the banksters then peddle this fake debt to anyone who will buy it, including other nations. It follows that the people who actually owe this debt are the banksters who profit from its creation and sale, and the people to whom they actually owe it are the public. It is owed to the public in the form of restitution with interest. Don't tell us how much we owe these slimy criminals. The very idea we owe them anything is ridiculous. Instead, tell us how to wring our blood, sweat, and tears back out of them before they explode like overfilled, self-dealing bags of technocratic pus. Congratulations, Chris Langan. That's as base as can be. In fact, I am nearly certain that I've heard absolutely all of this on the most based podcast I've ever heard, which is this one, unless somebody shows me another one. I'm not saying I'm definitely the most based podcaster in the world, but man, basically just in the normie sphere at this point. You got the normie sphere and you got Badlands, and that's about it. I mean, I wish it was different. I wish it was different. There are some people who are no longer normies about some stuff, but man, oh man. And by the way, being a Q follower does not get you out of being a normie. Okay. There are plenty of Q normies. They are all over the place. They think the television is still telling them the real thing. They're still very into being Q influencers with all of the Q influencers from before. So retarded. Okay. Here is Scott Bessent today addressing Elon Musk.
Taking advantage of the system. We're going to put in a work requirement, and we're just trying to get the levels back to where we were pre-COVID, which I don't think anybody disagrees with.
Elon Musk says this: it's obvious with this insane spending bill, increases the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. We live in a one-party country, the Porky Pig Party. Time for a new political party that actually cares about the people. And he's probably going to start one if this passes. What's your reaction? You guys famously tangled in the White House.
I admire Elon's leadership on rockets. I will take care of the finances.
So do you feel as though he says the $5 trillion adding to the deficit? You don't agree?
I don't agree at all. Let me tell you why. Because this bill will set off growth like we've never seen before. The CBO projections only project 1.8% per year growth, which is substantially below what we saw in President Trump's first term. And I think we are going to see big acceleration here. And once you see the growth trajectory change to an upward bias, the bill more than pays for itself. We could be in surplus.
So let's talk about the trade.
All right. So did they wrestle? Did they wrestle in the White House? Did Elon Musk shoulder check Scott Bessent into a picture of Nancy Reagan or whatever? Did that happen? Nah, that didn't happen. But the Elon thing is funny, and they are going hard after the rockets. Gosh, you got to wonder why, right? I mean, we were about to get to space. Elon Musk was going to take us to Mars. And I didn't share the clip, but in the Peter Thiel interview with Ross Douthat, he actually talks about Elon Musk and like saying that he kind of gave up on going to Mars in 2024. And I think that Thiel was just being clever with his words. I don't think that Elon Musk has given up on his Mars thing. But again, as we've talked about the entire time, the Mars thing is like a canard, and Elon Musk definitely knows that. So Elon's going to look after the rockets. Bessent is going to look after the finances. Elon Musk doesn't actually have anything worthwhile to say about the big, beautiful bill, which is why he's hammering on the problem that Langen has outlined and that I have outlined. It just doesn't matter. The debt ceiling doesn't matter. The deficit doesn't matter. The national debt doesn't matter. It's not going to get repaid. The money's fake. We didn't spend it. The people who are owed that money are the ones who created the money that then got spent. Okay? You can't then figure out a way to get back all of that money that they've created, even though most of it is just numbers in a machine. And then you're going to pay that back to them to solve the national debt. It's ridiculous. Okay? In the course of this conversation, it is also worth talking about the Federal Reserve. Here is Scott Bessent addressing that. And one more preface to this. We've talked consistently over the last couple of months. John's brought it up a number of times. A shadow Fed chair. Okay. The potential that a new Fed chair will be named before Jerome Powell's term officially ends and how that would work. And so Bessent is addressing that possibility here.
Talking about interest rates and the Federal Reserve, it has been recently reported that you might be in consideration for the job as the next Fed chair. When you've been asked about the likelihood recently, you said that it's up to the president. Is it a job that you would want?
I will do what the president wants, but I think I have the best job in D.C. We're making a lot of progress with the president's leadership. Think about it. We are going to have the tax bill on his desk by July 4th. We're going to be wrapping up the trade talks. So I think we've had great momentum, and we will be working on Chair Powell's successor over the coming weeks and months.
You had mentioned that an announcement could be as early as October or November, and Powell's term ends in May of 2026. How is the street supposed to navigate between that announcement time and the time between the term being over for Chair Powell? You were the one, I want to remind people, that had brought up the idea of a shadow Fed chair prior to the election. Is a new appointee supposed to be considered that shadow Fed chair?
Well, not necessarily. We'll see. There's a seat opening up, a 14-year seat opening up in January. So we've given thought to the idea that perhaps that person would go on to become the chair when Jay Powell leaves in May, or we could appoint the new chair in May. Unfortunately, that's just a 2-year seat.
So ultimately, do you think that there could be some confusion?
Well, I don't see why there would be confusion because, obviously there are people who are currently at the Fed who are under consideration. So why would there be confusion if that you add another candidate in January?
So what about Fed policy as it stands today? The president has voiced his preference for lower interest rates. There have been investors, but also most recently the Bank of International Settlements warning about any inflation risks tied to the tariff policy. Realistically, how much can the Fed lower rates this year? And what is the level and rate of unemployment that would suggest a faster pace of rate cuts? Economically, what has to slow?
Well, look, I said during my confirmation, I won't talk about the mistakes the Fed's going to make. I'll only talk about the ones they have made. They made a gigantic mistake in 2022. And as I like to point out, medical studies have shown that people who fall tend to look at their feet, which makes them fall more. And my worry here is that having fallen down on the American people in 2022, Fed's now looking at their feet. We have seen no inflation from tariffs. If we do, which we don't have to, then there'd be a one-time price adjustment. Nothing is more transitory than that. So, Team Transitory, having failed the American people in 22, they seem a little frozen at the wheel here.
I would suggest, and I have suggested before, that this seems like a perfect ploy to allow Jerome Powell to take whatever blame there is for whatever adjustment will eventually come when rates change. And Donald Trump has been hammering this pretty hard. This was his post from yesterday on Truth Social. Jerome Too Late Powell and his entire board should be ashamed of themselves for allowing this to happen to the United States. They have one of the easiest, most prestigious jobs in America, and they have failed and continue to do so. If they were going to do their job properly, our country would be saving trillions of dollars in interest costs. The board just sits there and watches, so they are equally to blame. We should be paying 1% interest or better. And so he then includes as a letter to Jerome Powell that he wrote on by hand, he kind of brackets the top 5 countries, or I should say the countries with the lowest Federal Reserve rates, 0.25, 0.45, 0.50, and then a couple 1.75s. And compares that to the United States of America, the 35th lowest rate at 4.5%. So that is, let me see, let me do the math here. 18 times the rate of Switzerland and 10 times the rate of Cambodia and almost 10 for Japan. That's kind of absurd. The Federal Reserve has the American dollar, the bank that provides the American dollar on behalf of the global regime, of course. You always got to keep that in the background. The bank that provides the dollar gives us the dollar at the worst rates. What? Is the dollar an American currency if that is the case? I would suggest it's not. It's quite clearly a global regime currency if that's the case. And so eventually that has to not be the case. That's preposterous. Let's go to Caroline Levitt in, I thought I just saw something fly at my face. In case you thought maybe I just had an aneurysm or something. Let's go to Caroline Levitt.
At the top is Switzerland. They're only paying a quarter for interest rates. Cambodia, Japan, Denmark, Thailand, Botswana, Barbados, Taiwan, Bulgaria, Cuba, Sweden, Morocco, Cabo Verde, South Korea, Algeria, Canada, Albania, Libya, Malaysia, China, New Zealand, Trinidad and Tobago, Czechia, Bolivia, Australia, Costa Rica, the Bahamas, Kuwait, Papua New Guinea, Bosnia, United Kingdom, and the UAE are all paying lower interest rates than the United States of America, which has one of the hottest and strongest economies in the world. The president sent this note to the Fed chair. It says, Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost, and there is no inflation. And the president is right. There is historically low inflation thanks to his policies, and we will continue.
So she gives the entire rundown and puts all of that on the record right out to the TV cameras. And it's a very good point. Hard to deny. Okay. Rumble Rant in the chat, Starborn, $2. There is a super chat on YouTube for You Just Saw It. Well, thank you very much. Going over to YouTube, I can see that there is indeed a super chat from Kathy LaBelle saying, for $20, saying, thanks, Chris, you are the best. Love your mind. Well, thank you very much, Kathy. That is a lovely sentiment, and I do appreciate your support. Okay. Let's bring this thing around. Oh, man. I had a whole geopolitical segment, too. I don't think we're going to get all the way through it. I don't think we're even going to get most of the way through it. It would be kind of a little silly to even attempt it, but maybe we'll do a couple. Okay, one last thing when it comes to the Fed. This was an interesting piece of news, and we will see how this plays out. Some people love Michael Horowitz, and some people are not huge fans of Horowitz because they think that he is kind of a limited hangout artist in some sense. He was the inspector general. He's been an inspector general for many years, and he was involved in reviewing the FBI and their work during the Russiagate hoax, found 17 errors in the FISA documents, uncovered stuff about McCabe, about Strzok, about Page. And the job never got all the way done. And so there was kind of the idea that Horowitz was on one side of this thing and that Durham was on the other. And there are other people that think that Durham's a limited hangout artist too. And this is all just being pushed under the rug. I don't think either of those things is the case. I think all of this stuff is being put on the record for what will eventually be Rico Grande. I still believe that's the route at the end of this or something similar. So this is, the notice was put up on June 6th, but this is news because it just became effective yesterday. Michael Horowitz has been appointed to lead the Federal Reserve Board's Office of Inspector General. By statute, the Federal Reserve's OIG also serves in that same role for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That's Elizabeth Warren's little pet project, an agency financed by but autonomous from the Federal Reserve. The OIG is tasked with making recommendations to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the agencies, as well as preventing and detecting waste, fraud, and abuse. So imagine, just for a second, that Horowitz isn't a bad guy and isn't a limited hangout artist. And now he's going into the Fed and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is an arm of the Fed, financed by the Fed, to find waste, fraud, and abuse and make sure that everything is above board. At least someone's doing the job. At least someone's doing the job. Okay, back to Rumble ad quickly, and then we will blaze through some geopolitics, and then we'll get out of here. So Rumble Premium, and just to let you know, I might do a stream tomorrow or perhaps Thursday. I will try to get another one in, but it's a matter of whether or not things happen. You know, this is a very low and slow news week. It's just the big, beautiful bill stuff. And then there's optics and made up feuds and the rest of it. We're just mostly watching the soap opera this week. We shall see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something better and bigger will happen, but I think we're going to be mostly getting holiday reruns and talking about nonsense legislation. Okay. So I don't know. What I'm saying is I don't know that there's going to be a couple hours worth of material to talk about tomorrow unless we just started gathering everything in and playing Match Online, where there's always new things to match. And oh, it provides so many revelations. Okay. Where am I? Oh, yes. A Rumble ad. So Rumble Premium, if I do the Substack subscriber stream tomorrow or Thursday, I will be setting the Rumble Premium feature. So if you want to watch the show on Rumble rather than Substack, you're going to have to be a member of Rumble Premium. When Rumble first started back in 2013, they built a platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted that they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration, but something else was definitely going on there. Rumble did not, and they held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They are attacked in corporate media. They are attacked by governments like France, and they are attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers. They don't get much of it. Watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Go to rumble.com/premium, use the promo code studio, and you'll get $10 off an annual subscription. Rumble.com/premium, code studio. Okay, let us press on. Let's go momentarily to India. Speaking of free speech, Indian tech hub state pushes jail terms for fake news, sparks worries. Okay, India's tech hub state. So while thinking about India's tech hub state, think about our tech hub state. What's our tech hub state? Well, for a long time, it was California. Some people would probably still argue that it's California. Does California draft legislation to curb speech? Yes. In fact, I personally was censored, provable in FOIA documents, by the Secretary of State's office in California for being filmed talking about how the Secretary of State's office had switched my voter registration to permanent mail-in ballot only without my permission. So they are certainly down to curb speech. Our tech hub state is anti-speech. So is India's, apparently. Draft legislation by India's tech hub state of Karnataka would impose jail terms of up to 7 years for spreading fake news and other misinformation. Fake news and other misinformation has stirred concerns among free speech activists that it could lead to censorship. With nearly 1 billion internet users, the stakes are high in a sprawling country of many ethnic and religious communities where fake news risks stirring deadly strife. And AI deepfake videos have alarmed officials during elections. And alarming officials is absolutely a good reason to censor people. That's what we're being told here. There's a chance that someone might not recognize an AI-produced deepfake video. And so that is enough to censor people. And videos alarmed officials during elections, so they might send people directly to jail. Now, I am not worried about this in any way, A, because it's India, and who gives a shit? I'm just kidding. I care about the Indian people too. But B, because it's draft legislation, and we've had the same things happen here. And the truth is, the only cure to the censorship problem is for everybody to refuse to change what they're saying in order to comply with the censors. And I'll just go back again to all those in the Republican establishment, in Con Inc., in the GOP establishment and elite, okay, the GOP-E, as they are called, the DeSantis Simps, all the pro-Ukraine, all the pro-Israel, all the people focused on elections all the time, probably all the people out there complaining about debt and deficits right now. Where were they? They weren't censored. Have they talked about censorship? No, but they have marketed Twitter as a free speech platform, despite it not being a free speech platform. Isn't that curious? I wonder what else those people are doing. And is this problem deeply embedded in the truth community? Matter of fact, yes, it is. Strange, huh? Speaking of Ukraine, this is from Russia Today. And I don't mean actually today. It's from the site Russia Today, but from Sunday. Lavrov compares Ukrainian Nazis with Third Reich. Based. He said, the Nazis burned Jews simply because they were Jews, and the Ukrainian Nazis burned Russian people in Odessa on May 2nd, 2014, simply because they were Russian. I wonder if that's what Hunter Biden was talking about when he was texting with his brother's widow, who he was in a relationship with, about how people believe that Hunter himself was involved in children being burned alive in the Donbass. Now, Odessa is not exactly Donbass, but kind of along the same lines, don't you think? A stunning comparison for a person, this is German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, a stunning comparison for a person who expects to be taken seriously. Oh, he's talking about Friedrich Merz. I'm sorry. That's my mistake. Lavrov says, a stunning comparison talking about Merz and his pushback for someone who expects to be taken seriously as Chancellor of Germany. But of course, we are not ready for the fraudulent approaches that some European leaders are pushing us toward. And that whole narrative, though that was a little choppy in my presentation, that whole narrative seems to be becoming unraveled. Consider how many people supported Ukrainian Nazis and continued supporting Ukraine even after they knew there were Nazis there. I mean, it's a lot of the country. It really is a lot of people. It's basically all Democrats, and the entirety of the GOP warmongering neocon establishment, all of them were like, those aren't Nazis. Those aren't the real Nazis. The real Nazis happened 80 years ago, and you're not allowed to talk about them. Only we are. Okay. Here's Vladimir Putin.
What we plan to do is we plan to decrease our defense spending while they are ramping up their defense spending. So if you look at their defense policies and military policies, it's quite clear. So let them do that. Let them do whatever they want to do. In the security sphere, well, it won't give them any more security. And in terms of social security and economic security, it will damage them.
So Russia is cutting spending despite being involved in a very real war in Ukraine and despite providing defensive capabilities for countries that have kicked out the regime across Africa and other regions. And that'll probably be diminished over time. But they're cutting back while we are pushing ahead with a $1 trillion budget for our military. And that's because our military has to serve as the global regime's military. Therefore, we have to spend all that money because the other countries won't. Although Trump is changing that, and we shall see how that ultimately goes. But speaking of Trump, here is Vladimir Putin commenting on Trump, assuming that I have properly grabbed this. Oh, there we are.
Deeply respect the current American president. He's traveled a very long and difficult path. There were hardships along the way, on his way to the White House. You know that he survived 2 attempts on his life. He's a very courageous person, that's for sure. As for what he's doing within the country, within the United States, or when it comes to the Middle East and his efforts there to achieve peace, for example, in the Ukraine crisis, we value that a lot. And let me say that publicly again, like I've said before, President Trump, I believe, sincerely wants to achieve peace in Ukraine. just recently he said it's more difficult than he had believed before. Well, that's true, and it's to be expected, because it's one thing when you look at something from the outside, and it's something different when you actually deal with it. And the same goes for the Middle Eastern matter. Although over there, I think he had much more experience. He was more involved in the Middle East before, but it's difficult there as well, because real life is always difficult. It's more difficult than what you initially believe.
Okay, and we can leave it there, but great respect being expressed for Donald Trump from Vladimir Putin, whose opinion is actually worth way more than all of our media combined. And here is Donald Trump talking about his relationship with some of these leaders.
Told us that Vladimir Putin reached out to you to help you with the Iran crisis.
He made some nice statements today. Did you see the statements? Very nice. Vladimir Putin made some very nice statements today. Look, he respects our country again. He didn't respect it a year ago, I can tell you right now. But Putin respects our country. And President Xi of China respects our country. And Kim Jong-un they respect our country again. We were not a country that was respected just a year ago. We had a president that was incompetent. We had bad people circulating around this desk, this beautiful, resolute desk. They had, I guess, evil intentions. You couldn't be that stupid. I mean, they had evil intentions. But the world respects our country again. Thank you very much, everybody. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
And the chaos breaks out. Everybody has to leave. That's a pretty funny thing that has stuck around since the fake and illegitimate presidency of Joe Biden. All of the staffers in the room trying to rush the press out as quickly as possible. Maybe one day we'll get some insight into exactly what all that means. It didn't seem like that ever had to happen prior to Joe Biden. Maybe I just missed it back then. Totally possible. Maybe Trump just puts himself on display in the Oval Office so much more in a way that other presidents haven't prior. I don't know. Okay, so we had this little issue last week. We've seen a lot of back and forth between Donald Trump and Mark Carney. He was up in Canada for the G7, came back early, and there has been some negotiation. Trump keeps talking about the 51st state, Canada becoming the 51st state. Carney keeps acting like he is the nationalist populist candidate or something. He somehow was able to beat the Canadian Ron DeSantis in Canada's fake elections somehow. It's not because he's installed as a TV character, and we should just use the understanding of that to figure out what the hell is going on. It's that we need to find out whether he's a good secret white hat or secret black hat. Donald Trump on Truth Social, we have just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, including the fact that they have charged our farmers as much as 400% tariffs for years on dairy products, has just announced that they are putting a digital services tax on our American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country. They are obviously copying the European Union, which has done the same thing and is currently under discussion with us also. Based on this egregious tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada, effective immediately. We will let Canada know the tariff that they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So Canada was totally aligned with Europe. And then Donald Trump had to tighten the screws on them. Here he is in the Oval Office.
Okay.
Mr. President, President, go back to your Truth Social post on Canada specifically. Why are you deciding to end trade talks with Canada, and what rate are you looking to set?
So Canada put a charge on some of our companies, and Canada has been a very difficult country to deal with over the years. You know, we hear Canada, we have a great relationship with the people of Canada, but it's been very difficult. And they put a charge, and they were a little bit early, we found out about it. So, and we have all the cards. We have every single one. We don't want to do anything bad, but they have, economically, we have such power over Canada. I'd rather not use it, but they did something with our tech companies today trying to copy Europe. You know, they copied Europe. It's not going to work out well for Europe either, and it's not going to work out well for Canada. They were foolish to do it. And so I said, we're going to stop all negotiations with Canada right now until they straighten out their act. Okay?
Is there anything Canada can do to change your mind about this situation?
Well, no, they put a tax on companies that were American companies that they shouldn't, a very severe tax. And yeah, I guess they could remove it. They will, but I don't really, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. We have all the cards. We have all the cards. You know, we do a lot of business with Canada, but relatively little. They do most of their businesses with us. And when you have that circumstance, you treat people better. They've had farmers that are getting like 300, 400, 200% in tariffs. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We have cases, you don't read this and the people don't report, but they charge us 400% on some dairy products. 400%. Nobody writes that. It's not fair to our farmers.
And the trade imbalance is something that we've discussed at great length over the last few months. But the important thing to remember is it's a one world, top-down, centralized, controlled economy. Okay. And Canada, as a regime state, well, they need certain things. They have to implement the regime agenda in Canada. And for that, they need money. And because Canada can't create that kind of money on their own, well, they get it from the US. So you figure out how to funnel the money from the US into Canada, and they create the trade imbalances to do exactly that in the proper industries. Everything is all mapped out and the agenda marches forward. We can see the way the machine works now, and we have to pay attention to that. So Canada immediately, upon hearing Trump's response, dropped their digital tax. And so now they're going to resume their negotiations. The U.S. will resume trade negotiations with Canada immediately after Ottawa scrapped its digital service tax targeting U.S. technology firms. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said on Monday. And we don't need to go deeply into that, but that's how quickly the situation is reversed. So what did we do? What did we see with Trump and Mark Carney? They seem to have a very good, open relationship. They're at least communicating. Even if they're not aligned in a real way, they're communicating, and Carney seems to be under some control. So Carney goes and flexes Canada's power, which allows Donald Trump to respond, and he flexes it in a way that would be immediately offensive because of censorship concerns within the country. And, you know, it's just out of bounds as far as Trump goes with harming and targeting an American company like that. So he uses his leverage back. Everything goes back immediately to the way it was before. So again, the question is, did anything happen? Because nothing actually had to happen. Just some messaging on one side, some messaging on the other side, and then the resolution, which gives everybody the chance to operate within the sifter. And I think this stuff is brilliant, honestly. It's both sides of the game board being played intentionally, which I guess you're able to do depending on your skill and the amount of power you have. All right. I think we can probably get through the rest of it in 10-ish minutes. I'll say that and then be terrible. But if I go to, I really had a way to bring it all home. And that was the whole thing, but could save it. All right, let's just go for it. So this is Donald Trump speaking out on the Ayatollah over the weekend. Why would the so-called supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, of the war-torn country of Iran, say so blatantly and foolishly that he won the war with Israel when he knows that statement is a lie? It is not so. As a man of great faith, he is not supposed to lie. His country was decimated. His 3 evil nuclear sites were obliterated. And I knew exactly where he was sheltered and would not let Israel or the U.S. armed forces, by far the greatest and most powerful in the world, terminate his life. I saved him from a very ugly and ignominious death. And he does not have to say, thank you, President Trump. In fact, in the final act of the war, I demanded that, where did I go? I demanded that Israel bring back a very large group of planes which were headed directly to Tehran, looking for a big day, perhaps the final knockout. And we can leave that there because I know that we went through this on Friday as well. But I really want to focus on the death element, because Trump said that he saved him from an ugly and ignominious death. And also that he made clear that the supreme leader was Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And what did we hear about other Ayatollahs over the weekend? Well, two of them, we were told in pointless viral stories that people just spread without thinking. We were told that there were two fatwas issued against Donald Trump. Oh, wow. Fatwas. What are we going to do? Find a regime-funded terrorist organization to carry out these fatwas? I cannot believe that people still buy into this stuff. And I don't know this to be true, obviously, but you have to wonder if Donald Trump was trying to make it very clear in a post that would be read by people that the Ayatollah is this guy, not those other guys they're telling you are the Ayatollahs with the fatwas. We're all just, all of this is narrative manipulation to safely land the plane of these Iran-Israel negotiations, the crisis which we totally watched unfold over the past couple of weeks. All of this stuff is very careful there. And so I would suspect with his advance notice on these things in general, I think we can assume that Trump has all the information, that something else was going on and that was leading into the stories of the weekend. This is the Iranian foreign minister responding. Syed Abbas Araghchi, I think is how you'd say that. I don't know. The complexity and tenacity of Iranians is famously known in our magnificent carpets, woven through countless hours of hard work and patience. Talking about the rugs, the Persian rug right there. But as people, our basic premise is very simple and straightforward. We know our worth, value our independence, and never allow anyone else to decide our destiny. If President Trump is genuine about wanting a deal, he should put aside the disrespectful and unacceptable tone toward Iran's supreme leader, Grand Ayatollah Khamenei, and stop hurting his millions of heartfelt followers. The great and powerful Iranian people who showed the world that the Israeli regime had no choice but to run, quote unquote, daddy, to avoid being flattened by our missiles, do not take kindly to threats and insults. If illusions lead to worse mistakes, Iran will not hesitate to unveil its real capabilities, which will certainly end any delusion about the power of Iran. Goodwill begets goodwill, and respect begets respect. So really taking it to Donald Trump, getting a little dig in on Israel there, talking about running to daddy. And we saw that with the NATO summit last week. A strong response. What will it mean? Who goes after Donald Trump like that and lives? Well, only someone who is still amid negotiations with that very same Donald Trump, I would suspect. Trump in the evening, this is Friday, before that reply, but he also noted who in the fake news is the sleazebag saying that President Trump wants to give Iran $30 billion to build non-military nuclear facilities. Never heard of this ridiculous idea. It's just another hoax put out by the fake news in order to demean. These people are sick. And perhaps, but the part I would focus on there is whether or not Trump is going to be delivering that money, or whether it's just that the sanctions will be unfrozen on that particular money, or that the money is detached from the civilian nuclear program, which something is going to happen along those lines. Something is going to happen with a nuclear energy program for civilian use. And we can already see the formation of those consortiums. I talked about that article from the Atomic Energy, the Bureau on Atomic Energy, or whatever it's called. The people that do the doomsday clock, they were talking about a consortium of countries in the Middle East with the United States and others, Turkey, I think, being involved in that nuclear consortium. Something is going to happen there, okay? And got to understand that things are going in that direction. Trump is doing what Trump does. Maybe he's 100% serious there, that no help is inbound. Who knows? So Trump, we talked about the Netanyahu post last week. He followed up on the Netanyahu post on Saturday, saying it is terrible what they are doing in Israel to Bibi Netanyahu. He's a war hero, a prime minister who did a fabulous job working with the United States to bring great success in getting rid of the dangerous nuclear threat in Iran. Importantly, he is right now in the process of negotiating a deal with Hamas, which will include getting the hostages back. How is it possible that the prime minister of Israel can be forced to sit in a courtroom all day long over nothing? Cigars, Bugs Bunny doll, etc. It is a political witch hunt, very similar to the witch hunt that I was forced to endure. This travesty of justice will interfere with both Iran and Hamas negotiations. In other words, it is insanity doing what the out-of-control prosecutors are doing to Bibi Netanyahu. The United States of America spends billions of dollars a year, far more than on any other nation, protecting and supporting Israel. We are not going to stand for this. We just had a great victory with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu at the helm, and this greatly tarnishes our victory. Let Bibi go. He's got a big job to do. And I think that Trump actually means that, and that Bibi really does have something that he has to do. He is in the epicenter of it. And I have suggested before, I think that the evil twin in Israel, if it included Netanyahu at some point, doesn't seem to include Netanyahu in its plans now. They've been attempting to rid Israel of Netanyahu for years. Color revolutions, blame for the paragliding go-kart incident, all sorts of stuff. There is a uniparty right element, a neoconservative element, a global regime element in their proxy state of Israel. And it seems like they're the ones who want to get rid of Netanyahu. And Trump is making it look like, at least, optics at least, suggest that Netanyahu is still his guy. We are coming down quickly to the end here. This was the result after Trump's post. Now, was it one of those things that Trump knew was already going to happen? And so he posted his alignment for various narrative manipulation in advance? Could be. Court cancels PM Netanyahu's trial hearings this week. And so one day after Trump's post, now there's no Netanyahu in court. The witch hunt has been at least temporarily inverted. Trump follows up on Truth Social saying, make the deal in Gaza, get the hostages back. DJT. And one more clip from Bannon to wrap it up, and we will be on our way out of here.
Folks know the old parlor tricks of the jihadists and even the Israel First community, both of them are not going to work anymore. The parlor tricks and the old playbook are not going to work. Telling folks that they're anti-Muslim or anti-Semites because you have to have a discussion about these things. The American people are going to have a discussion, okay? And the American people are going to come to some conclusions and decisions about what is right for the United States of America and what is right for American citizens, both living and in future generations. We owe that to everybody that came before us. And Beau French is down there and done such an amazing job in Tarrant County. I mean, we've turned Texas around. Now, I realize we got these huge fights going on, but hey, Trump won by 14 points. Even the unlikable Ted Cruz won by 9 because of this. And now they're calling him a anti-Muslim and anti-Semite because he's talking about some issues down there. And this ties back to this Dan Caldwell op-ed in the Washington Post. What in the hell are we spread all over hell's half acre in the Middle East with 50,000 troops that are used as human shields? That's why they're there. They're there because they're human shields. Anytime something comes up, he says, well, you got to protect the troops. You got to say, well, hang on for a second. Why do we have them in all these bases in Iraq? What the hell, they're up in Syria? Why are they all over? Why are we in Qatar? Those guys punch way above their weights. Now they got big militaries. We can have expeditionary forces. You just saw Trump drop the hammer. When you need to drop the hammer, drop the hammer. This is why, we need to build up the Navy, right? We don't need all of these ground troops everywhere. And for Beau French down in Texas, I'm announcing right now, Beau's going to be on the show on Monday, and we're going to go through this. But the old parlor trick of he's anti-Muslim, he's anti-Semitic, that's not going to work anymore. People are tired of it. And they're tired of, like, we're Americans. We can't have conversations about this stuff. That all somebody call names. We don't care. You can call any name in the book. America First Movement does not care. This is the reason President Trump won in 16, won in 20, and came back and won in 24. And now you see his agenda is being executed, right? We've got tenacity and resilience.
The words just aren't going to work anymore. And still, strangely, there's a lot of people in the Republican Party talking a lot about anti-Semitism. And one of them, by the way, is Donald Trump, who continues to push for anti-Semitism legislation to be added in all sorts of various venues. And I think that that's very effective in thwarting what will eventually be the Trump is Hitler op when we see that thing come back around. So very effective. But yeah, everybody should just be saying what they understand to be true and trying to be diligent about understanding what's true rather than cutting off the conversations about the most important things. It is obvious that Trump is working in a direction, and people defending those with the little R's next to their name are missing the boat. Okay, one more. I'm going to get this last Rumble ad in and then get out of here. This one is for Truth Social. And if you follow me online, you're probably on Truth Social. I am on there at I'm Your Moderator, and I enjoy it. Donald Trump says it's the real voice of America. It is his platform. There are big things coming for that platform. I think we've been led to believe in multiple ways. Zero Hedge just had a post that I shared about it a couple of weeks ago. And at some point, it might become critical. They've now got their Truth Plus, like streaming television service as part of Truth Social, and that's going to be broadcast globally. Okay. So he says it's the real voice of America. Well, what was the other voice of America? The voice of America was that government propaganda organization that broadcasts American propaganda around the world. And so now Trump is saying that Truth Social is the real voice of America, and they are going to broadcast American movies, television, documentaries, etc., around the world, in addition to podcasts and the rest of it. Maybe one day they'll even invite Badlands. That said, I think something's going on with Truth Social, and it's worth paying attention to. And platforms improve when more people adopt them and when more people spend more time on them. Okay, so if you're looking to do that, head on over to Truth Social. You get breaking news and commentary from top media figures. If you want to see Trump's Truth Social posts, that's the only place to find them until people propagate them all over the internet, as I also do. But that said, go join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard, join the movement, join Truth Social, and find me at I'm Your Moderator. If you are watching this for the first time on Substack or YouTube or Rumble or wherever else, go ahead and hit that follow button and hit the thumbs up. All of that would be very helpful. And I am checking the chat before we get out of here. Checking Substack and YouTube. I hope all of you over there had a lovely time, and I will be seeing you soon. I will let people know through a Substack email and on Truth Social and Telegram if I will be doing a show either tomorrow or Thursday. Otherwise, we'll see you back here next week, and I'll let you know. It's going to be Monday or Tuesday. At the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. And Joe Biden was never.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
What's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What? In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon, down on the range.